What's up, my fellow poker enthusiasts? It's Rene, aka the Wacko here, and together with my co-host Adam Carmichael, we present to you the Mechanics of Poker podcast. In this podcast, we deconstruct high-stakes poker players, figuring out what it is about them, how they think, what they do that makes them so successful, with an extra focus on the obstacles they faced and the skills they had to develop to surpass them. Over the years, me and Adam have gained a lot of experience in both reaching high-stakes poker ourselves and teaching other players to do the same. We have bundled all this knowledge together in our coaching program, The Mechanics of Poker, which is the most complete poker coaching product on the market. If you want to have a chance to work with me and Adam so you can get unstuck and make more progress in your poker career, go over to mechanicsofpoker.com to apply. But without further ado, let's learn from another high-stakes player's journey in today's episode. Welcome to another episode of the Mechanics of Poker podcast. We're very excited to start chatting with today's guest, but before we introduce him, a quick announcement, because the long-anticipated 2.0 update of our coaching program, The Mechanics of Poker, is now available for application. Next to updating the original content, the monthly live Q&As and thriving Discord community, we have added over 12 hours of new content, which include a better understanding of GTO and how it translates to practice, the bluff and bluff catching system, and tools to analyze your game for leaks and variants, one-on-one coaching sessions to review if you are applying the knowledge correctly. We only have room for 10 students to join the first release of the program. So if you think you have what it takes to master the mechanics of poker, go over to mechanicsofpoker.com to apply and we will get back to you. Now, our guest for today, after our most popular episode with Mr. Munistar, we're returning to Russia to have a chat with high-stakes poker player Viktor Enlightq Kudinov. Viktor is the fastest riser to high-stakes poker we have had on so far, as it took him 4 years to get to 5K NL cash games, beating Tobias, aka Dot, who needed 5 years to get there. Now, we are very curious to find out what made him get to high stakes that much faster than the other players we have had on. One thing he has in common with many of our previous guests is his background in competitive sports and gaming, starting at a young age with playing football, then transitioning into strategic computer games like Warcraft and Dota, and through cybersports rolling into the world of poker. Now, it's not been without its ups and downs, and one of the main reasons he wanted to join the pod is for you guys to learn from his experience to increase your chances of becoming a successful poker player, but most importantly, help you to become a happier person. As always, we're joined by my co-host, Adam. Adam, I bet you think it's interesting to see that his main motivation to come on is to help our listeners become happier instead of richer.
It's a beautiful motivation. And you think about it, very often, we try to achieve personal success. We try to climb our own mountain to get to the top. And then when you get to the top of the mountain, a lot of successful people want to lean backwards, lead on a hand, and help other people on their journey. So it shows a lot where Viktor's at his current part of his life, and he wants to help you, the audience, to be happier people. And along the way, you'll learn a lot of stuff to be successful as well. Hopefully, we'll be able to unpack a lot of nuggets that you guys can use. But yeah, it's a really good motive to want to help you guys to have happier, more successful lives. So yeah, really looking forward to it. And he's already shared some of his kind of trials and tribulations that he's faced throughout his poker career. I won't spoil those for the audience. We'll be diving into him going broke, hitting rock bottom moments, and all the challenges he had to face to become the high stakes crusher that he is today.
Yeah, it's going to be a great episode, I'm sure. But before we start, I would like to give a big shout out to GTO Wizard for sponsoring today's podcast. GTO Wizard has made studying poker accessible for everyone, and in my opinion, is the best place to go if you're serious about improving your poker game. Next to having access to all GTO solutions for every spot and having the ability to upload your hands and let Wizard find it for leaks, you get access to weekly coaching webinars in which various coaches, including myself, educate you on the most important spots to start crushing the game. Go over to gtowizard.com/mechanics to get started, and you will get 10% off on your first month. That is gtowizard.com/mechanics. Now, without further ado, let's get into today's episode with Viktor. Mr. Kudinov, thank you for coming on the podcast. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thank you for invite. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I wanted to start off at the beginning, which is starting to become a trend actually on this podcast, which is a background in competitive sports and gaming. Now, you mentioned that you started playing football already at a young age. Now, many people who are listening, me included, I've played football when I was at a young age. I've played video games. However, it was more of a fun activity than something that I was actually doing competitive. And I was wondering what made you take sports and later video games so competitive?
Yeah, I mean, I started to play football serious because of my coach. It was like pretty funny story because we was just friends who was playing on football field close to our school. We was playing every day, and one day one guy came to us and asked, "Do we want to try to play professionally?" Some of us told yes, and he made like small team from us. He started to coach us, and then he signed up some sort of contract, or I don't know what it was between them, but we started to play like in a small team in our city. And this guy, he was he was like 40 years old, no, not 40, even 50 something, and he was ex-professional player. He even played in USSR team. So he started to teach us, and also I played much more than hours because I was pretty obsessed by the game. It was very interesting to me. So like my routine was I go to practice with team. When I go home, I do something, and then I go to play with friends. Then friends going to home, and I just playing alone, trying to do some tricks or something like that. Uh, I I can't even say why I loved football that much, but I was just obsessed for it. I was like, anytime when I have some free time, when I don't need to do school things or something like that, I was playing football.
Like, all right, so it was then it was mainly like a coach that kind of saw potential in you and your friends that kind of planted the idea in your head, like, hey guys, you could maybe do this professionally as well. You also.
I think biggest point for him was like it was pretty bad and hard times in Russia, and a lot of young people was drinking, smoking, and doing stuff like this. And he just wanted us to have a normal life, better life for us. I think it's like not about potential. He wanted to uh, give us a chance to be healthier, to be more successful, because like he suffer a lot of people who ruining their lives around. So like I think it was more mental side for him to try to make live around him better.
Okay, that's very interesting. So it was more like he also gave sort of a community service, you could say, to like try to give kids a certain perspective or an option, a career path that they could follow so they don't end up on the streets.
Yes.
What this coach, is there, if you think back about this coach, is there any specific teaching that stuck with you up until today?
Yes, that was like, for example, in winter, it's like minus 20, minus 25 degree. We always had outside trains. So we was playing on the snow and stuff like that. And he always was like, uh, I don't know how to say it. Like we never got cold from that. It was pretty good for our health. And also he never tried to hold players. Like when I started to play a bit better than other players in team, he told me a few options in our teams where I can go. Like he never tried to hold us with him. He always was like, if you can go somewhere and it will be good for you, you can go.
It seems like a very good guy to have around. So he was clearly having your best interest in mind, not necessarily his best interest in terms of gathering good players around him.
Yes, he was like, it's not only coach, he was like guru for us. I don't know how to say it correctly.
Yeah,
But
no, I understand.
he always was like open for conversation. He always was asking uh, about our mood, about our living, about. He always was telling us like, even if you like football very much, you need to think about school. You need to teach well, learn well. You don't need to ignore school because football is hard. You might not get in professional teams, and you need to be educated. So like he always put us on first place personalities.
But it seems like a great guy to have around starting at a young age. You mentioned you wasn't really sure why you liked football so much. I've heard that coaches say like some players are more a coach on the pitch. They really think about the game strategically. But you also mentioned, if you were by yourself, you would just be doing tricks and stuff. Do you think it was also like the strategic aspect of football that attracted you so much?
Yeah, definitely. It's a very complicated game, and I liked like trying to do something hard in football, like hard tricks, hard shots. But it's not always working. But I practice it a lot to do something. It's like
And did you? Mhm.
it's always interesting to me to make some goal and try to learn it and like go further and further in that.
So you already had a sort of reflecting mentality then from that young age. What is something that that coach also taught you? Like, okay, you did well, but how can you improve? Was that something that you naturally had? Like, okay, I now made this goal or now made this trick, but how can I do it better next time? Was that something that this coach taught you, or was it something that already came natural to you, or maybe someone else?
I think it was naturally in me, and I can't even imagine from where I had it. Like I had it almost all of my life, maybe from some books. Like our brain works like really strange. Like we can uh, learn something pretty long and don't understand it well, but sometimes we can just see some words in book or some conversation in film and like some conversation in real life, and it will hit our heart and like improve our way. So I can't remember from where I get it, but somehow I was just trying to improve.
Yeah, it could be as easy as you watched a cartoon when you were little. You cannot remember it consciously, but unconsciously, that made an impact on you. That was like, oh, so this is how you improve. It's like what you
Yeah,
said. The mind has a weird way. Everything you get in gets a place somewhere, unconsciously or consciously, and yeah, that kind of forms your character.
yeah. But like also it didn't work for me everywhere. Like in school, uh, I was I was improving only if it was interesting for me. So like in some parts of my education, like if someone didn't inspire me, it was almost unreal to me to improving in that because I easily getting bored and I like okay, it's boring. I don't want to do this, and it's super hard for me to doing something what I don't like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think many players can relate to that, right?
Yeah,
The focus that we suddenly have for a video game or football or for poker is completely different than the focus we had at school, where they were just teaching us stuff that they thought we should learn, but that wasn't necessarily, we weren't necessarily intrigued by the lesson. So your teachers were not like your football coach that you were like, oh wow, I really look up to this guy, this is something I can learn from. Those teachers
yeah,
you didn't have in your education.
yeah. Most of them wasn't like that. Yes, like I I think only teacher of history was like that, and I liked history a lot, and maybe literature, but nothing more.
So if you take something very serious, did you then notice at some point that maybe the joy for football will become a little bit less if you were forced to play too much, or you think your coach in this case also made sure that everyone had the right balance between improving but still having fun in the game?
Yeah, it's like in everything, it's easy to burn out or to like get very close to your cap of your skills, and then you like easily losing motivation because you think it's super hard to go over the cap, and it's like you need to spend unrealistically a lot of time to get better, and it's most hard thing in like in life, I think, to recognize can you do this or not. But most of the time, if you're still enjoying what you're doing, you just keep going. You don't stop on this line because you're like, okay, maybe it will work, maybe not. I will just go.
And
I
you
think
also,
it's
I guess,
the best way.
enjoy the challenge, I assume, as well.
Yes, yes, of course.
So you you then transitioned into video games, correct? Mainly playing Warcraft and Dota, you wrote down. How did you get in touch with that? When did you decide to move from the football pitch to
Yeah,
indoors to play video games? Was it the -25 that you were like, okay, I'm tired of playing in -25 football weather, let's play video games instead?
it was like there was in the time was pretty popular internet cafes on Russia because like very low amount of people had PC at home and the internet at home. And I started to missing school a lot with friends. We go to internet cafe, play Counter-Strike, Warcraft and other games. And like this was period of my life when I didn't like at school at all. I started to missing it really a lot, and I was just going to internet cafe because it's like it's best place where you can't get caught. Because if you go to play football somewhere, someone see you, they know what you not sick or something like that, and you will have problems. So easiest way was go to internet cafe, and then I started to play video games, and I like it Warcraft very much because it was very complex and hard game too, and it was super competitive. There was like big ladder, and I started to play a lot of that. And I didn't was pretty good in Warcraft. I maybe was like in top 1,000 of ladder or something like that, and but still was interesting to play. But then when my friends showed me Dota, and I started to play this much more.
All right, all right. So what is it about then the strategic games like Dota and Warcraft that attracted you more? For example, you could have also played FIFA indoors, right? Stick with football, but what is it then about Warcraft and Dota that attracts you so much more than other type of games?
I think it's because it's more complicated. Like it's clearly strategic games, and you need to think a lot about what you're doing. Like one friend of mine, he's played Dota a lot, and he's also a great chess player, Ian Nepomniachtchi. And he told what like this there is a lot of similarities between Dota and chess. He was like even saying what Dota is new chess. So yeah, I think it's like it's interesting games to play. It's practice your brain. Like I wasn't thinking about that when I played it that times. I was just playing because I having fun. But when I watching that from retrospective, I just thinking what I always was looking for something to keep my mind working, because when I stopped to go to school, and also I like when I stopped to play football, I was drinking and like was living pretty bad life, I can say. But from young age, I was reading a lot, so I was like my mind was ready to new information, And even when I was drinking and doing some random stuff outside, it was trying to keep busy. Maybe because of that, I was attracted by computer games, just to get something hard for my mind, something
Yeah,
interesting for my mind.
and in our questionnaire before the pod, we always ask that question as well: how easy was school for you? And you wrote down very, very easy. So that was, school was not an environment in which your brain got stimulated to learn, and therefore you looked for external things like football, like video games, to kind of find that challenge, so you could actually bother to try, basically.
Yeah, I think I was good like until like 13 years. I think at school I was had very good results there, but then like had a couple of tragedies in my life. My mother died, and like it was very hard times in Russia. So I was just I was almost always in pretty bad mood. It was hard times mentally for me, and I just was looking for some place where I can be like not in life, like not here, something like that. I think it was main reason why I stopped to go to school, because I didn't want to be somewhere where there's a lot of people, and when people forcing me to do what I don't want to do, uh, I was just trying to find like some sort of peace and silence for myself. Like, of course, I didn't recognize it then, but I just can say it back on the time when I watching from now at that times.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you go to this internet cafe, to this community there, and everyone is just focused on the gaming, and it's like a whole cyber world where you can just sort of forget about life
Yes.
outside of that.
Yeah, definitely, yes.
Very interesting. You mentioned that through the cyber world, so probably through these internet cafes, you also got into touch with poker. This is where you first got into touch with poker. Was it someone within the Dota environment or within the Warcraft environment that started to play poker and was like, "Hey, Viktor, we should go play that game instead"?
No, it was like a lot of games, and Dota, for example, was played on platform what called Garena, and I think poker was just very pepper at the time. And in this Garena, you can buy a premium account to get access to some semi-private lobby what have less players and work better. And you can make this account by payment or by winning chips in poker for play money. So I was just playing poker to get account. Mostly I was just like I didn't read rules almost. I just was blind all-ins from several accounts. Somewhere I get enough balance and buy premium. It was my first time I played poker. But also some players from Internet Cafe and from Dota community started to play poker, and I just watched it at that like in chance to get out from poor life. And like Russia and Dota community had like few pretty good players. Like Antoha is ex Dota player. He
Oh,
played
okay.
like 5K plus, and like in that days it was like 2013 or 2014, I think. There was already a bunch of players who played like up to NL 1K. Yeah, but I first time I tried poker, I think in 2014 or something like that. I get poker strategy $50, played, won something, then lost it, and retired from poker again. Like I just played 2 days, and then decided to keep my Dota career. But like in Dota, it was a bit hard for me because I can't go to LAN events. I was like a couple of times I was winning with my team slot on some event in Sweden or something like that, and I just can't go. They took someone instead of me. They go to play there. They show okay results. Some organization might even give them contract, but I like there was pointless to hold me on the team most of the time. And like when I had this situation like 2 or 3 times, I was super stressed and decided to what I should finish my career. And like I played very last tournament. It was like pretty big event. Star Ladder back on the days it was a big event, and we played in first division. We lost there, and I just queued Dota and decided to try poker again. I just downloaded few poker books. It was like I decided to play tournaments. I don't know why. I didn't was in touch with any poker players, so I decided what tournaments is like more competitive. I downloaded a couple of books, like it was Jonathan Little, it was Harrington, and something like that. And I just started to reading these books and make notes because like I had I think $80 or something like that to deposit, and I understood what I don't have a lot of chances. So I just started to studying before playing.
Oh, that's very interesting because most people, they just start playing out poker and they kind of learn from there. But you realized from straight away from the beginning, like, I need to be careful with this $80 that I have. I need to invest it well. So let me first study up on this game so I actually know what I'm doing.
Yeah, something like that. Yes.
Very, very, very responsible. Did you find any similarities between playing Warcraft, Dota, and poker? You mentioned that your friend who played chess, he called Dota like the new chess. Could you call poker also like the new Dota, new Warcraft? Are there any similarities?
Yes, like it's both strategic game and I unlikely for me. I understood it pretty late, but both of these games have very hard mental state because like you need to really be mentally prepared. It was it was my biggest mistake by far in poker because I ignored mental side of poker for a long time. Like when I recognize it, what you need to work on your mental side, I even started to text my friends from Dota, like this. I have friends who played in Virtus Pro in one best of the alliance, and I started to text him like, bro, you really need to you need to hire psychotherapists for your team. You need to work on that. Like you need to try this because this like a very big similarity between these games because you need to be in very good mental shape to have good results.
I can imagine. And is it then mainly like what is it that it's so challenging about? Like I don't have any experience playing Dota or Warcraft, but is it also like the variance side of it?
Yes, there is some side of variance, of course, and like uh, variance always hit more the more opportunities you have. And in Dota, you have a giant tree of opportunities, and you have 5 players on your side and 5 players on our side. So like tree is really big, and there is just casual variants like on some runes or some stuff like that, critical damage and other stuff. But there is also like hidden variants, what like some of your players might make mistake because of something, or you can make mistake because of something. Like you didn't watch Dota, but like great example will be like last major tournament when one Chinese team who is like they're super top, they're very good, but on the grind finals they just tilted and left the game what they can play more. And it's like it's showing what its mental state in both Dota and poker. It's like it can snowball you. It can like put you on more and more and more pressure, and you need to practice a lot to not fall under that.
You mentioned like the variance of, for example, your teammate screwing up, right? So Dota, you
Yeah.
said you play 5 against 5, so it's clearly a team effort. How was it for you switching from like a team sport with football, Dota, to something way more individual like poker?
It was super good for me because my very last team was it was 3 young guys. Like I was 24 then, and they was like 16, 17, and it was very hard to play with them because they was super young, super ambitious. They was like there was a lot of absurd things there. Like Russian Dota teams, it's super unprofessional in many aspects. Like maybe it will watch some people who understand Dota. So I will say just I even played one against one versus my teammate to decide who will play which position. It's like it's total absurd for professional team, but we had this because like these young guys was like talking too much. We was talking too much shit to each other. There was like no supportive side on our team. Like if we was losing game, we was always discussing who played bad, whose mistakes was more, and something like that. It was never like, okay, guys, we lost, we need to practice, we need to be better. It always like, oh, you fucking idiot, you ruined our game and stuff like that. So like in poker, there is only one fucking idiot.
So yeah, okay, yeah. So you it's easier because if you screw up, you can just point at yourself. And I think what it sounded like there, if someone screwed up, they like to point at other people. It also sounds like there was a lot of ego involved in this environment.
Yes, of course. It's like it's much harder.
So did I mean, you have a lot of experience with that. What kind of qualities do you think playing Dota and Warcraft made you develop that gave you an edge starting off in poker?
I think first of all is discipline to practice and same thing a lot. Like in Dota, you playing like I was playing in Dota. It's more than 100 heroes, and some days I was like playing just one hero straight every day, like 10 plus games. So and it's like it's very needed skill in poker to do same thing a lot. And also in Dota, if you're playing good, you need to it's you can look at game like it's very casual style. You can play Dota for fun. You can play semi-professional. You can play professional. Like there is a lot of levels to dive deeper, and I think it's totally same in poker. Like you can just bump hunt, you can reg var, like a lot of thing to go deeper and deeper and deeper. So you can just like put your opponent on the hand, you could put your opponent on the range, you can think like a lot deeper in poker, and it's like it's pretty similar to in Dota.
Interesting. You also mentioned that both in football and in video games, you looked for inspiring people. You had this inspiring coach. Was there any player specifically or someone who you started playing poker with that inspired you a lot? You mentioned, for example, Antoha maybe was an example of someone showing that you can be actually successful in poker.
It's pretty funny because I remember like I started to look for some teaching project in poker and baking, and there was like I invited to some team, and there was like a guy with results. He like won 1.50K his career, something like that. He was like actually winning like 20K yearly. And I was showing his results to my girlfriend, who is my wife, and was telling like, look, yeah, I can make that much money if I will practice a lot. So it's funny what inspired me in poker was someone who was making money. But now it was pretty fun. Like when I was in Cyprus, in Triton series, and we was like, people was having fun from me because I playing like degenerate. And one guy told me like, look, this guy, he's playing poker like he playing Dota. He totally don't give a fuck about anything. And I think it's true. Like I'm not playing poker for money, but first thing what inspired me when I came to poker was someone making money, and it's like it's pretty fun.
Yeah, because also you mentioned in football already, your coach kind of installed this, right? That this could be a way out. So I think from a young age, growing up in Russia, in the environment that you grew up, that was something that was planted in you to think about like, hey, think about safety. You need to think about a way that you can make money. You mentioned it were tough times. So it makes sense that you saw poker as an opportunity to make money. But when you started to make money, like the competitive gamer in you took over and was like, oh, how can I improve? What is the next level? What is the next level? And then you don't give a fuck about money anymore.
Yeah, something like that.
You started out, you said you started out playing MTTs because you thought, I think you mentioned that you thought that was more competitive. Why did you decide to play MTTs? Was that purely because that was your perception, or was that, for example, the examples that you had were playing tournaments as well?
No, I was just thinking it's more competitive and more interesting, but it was big mistake.
Yeah. So it was interesting. What made it so interesting, and why was it a big mistake in hindsight?
Because cash is much better. I mean, MTTs is fun to play. I still love to play MTTs. I still love to play live MTTs more than live cash, much more. But in MTT, I think it's like more boring comparing to cash, and also I find out what it's less competitive, because on MTT the only plus of MTT what you can win it. In cash game you can't win. You don't have end point, and in tournament you have end point. You win, tournament over, you good. In cash game you don't have it, but on the other side, like cash much more interesting, because because it's deeper, you have more opportunities to move, to do something.
It's interesting because most probably if I speak to a lot of MTT players, they actually call cash games boring, right? They say, it's so static, blah, blah, blah. How do you, why do you, because in tournaments, there is a lot of interesting phases, right? You have different phases during the tournament. You have different strategies. Stacks get shorter. Then you have ICM, etc. So I think a lot of players would actually make the argument that MTTs or cash games is way less boring. But what makes cash less boring for you than tournaments?
It depends on how you watch. If you match which is wider, MTTs is wider, a lot more spots, but cash game is much deeper than MTTs, because you can think pretty deep. There is more trees what you can use. There is more sizings you can use. You can have much more tricks in your pocket. And in MTTs, if it go 20 or less big blinds deep, you can't go something crazy without burning your money. And it's and also ICM, a lot of shallow stacks, ICM, it's things what handle you from doing something interesting. You have just opportunity to play correct or burn money. And in cash games, when you play 100 big blinds deep and you play free-handed or heads up, so range is wide, you can try to do some exploit things. And even if it's not very good, it's hard to make super big EV regret if you're not going totally out of line thing. And it's giving much more space to improve, I think.
Yeah, and then I guess also it has two sides, right? Yeah, like you said, in ICM you can either screw up or play correct, whereas in the environment that you described, like 300 big blinds cash, you have actually an opportunity to do something very good, right? Whereas in ICM and in tournaments with shorter stacks, often you're a bit handcuffed and you're kind of restricted what you can do. Yeah, the guy goes all in and you can either make the correct play or make sort of a blunder by folding a certain hand that you should call, for example, or calling a certain hand that you should fold. But other than that, that's it, right? You're just a bit more handcuffed. So that's kind of what makes it a bit boring for you.
Yeah.
So you then saw the light at some point after playing MTTs for 2 years. You switched into cash games. Any do you recall any difficulties? Because I'm sure you adapted certain habits that worked well in MTTs. Were there certain things you had to unlearn when starting to play cash games?
I can say maybe I was pretty unlucky in a lot of periods of my career. I had huge downswings, but I was very extremely lucky in people around me. Like I switched to cash games because I meet one guy from Rostov who played poker. He played cash, and we hung out few times. When he told me what he apartment rate was finishing rent, and we decided to live some time together. So he moved to my house and we played sitting to each other. He played cash, I was playing MTTs, and this guy was Stefan. Actually, like he played NL 200 in that times, and every day he was telling me, "Dude, stop playing this fucking game. Go play cash. Like it's much better. It's much better." He was playing Snap 200 on 88 that times, and he was forcing me to try to play cash. I played like couple of sessions and I found what it's interesting. So like he forced me to change discipline. Then like second time when I get super lucky, I go with friends to Cyprus. It was a Gypsy Team Poker Series, made by Russian poker forum. I played there some cash games. I played some tournaments there, and then that time was going the international, its biggest Dota tournament. So I decided to take laptop and go watch this tournament on lobby on big TV, and guys joined it to me. We started to have conversation, and this was like Invoker and one guy who was crushing Zoom 500. And Invoker in that times he was like holding lobby of 5k plus, and we started to hang out, and he. I back home. He invited me to play Dota. I joined party, and Antoha joined our party, and I recognized what I know him for like 7 years or something like that. So they give me coaching. So like I was in that way, I was super lucky. There was just uh, most most of the time I had some people who was always ready to help me, to give me some explanation of what I can do. But also I think it's pretty good to say I was never go over their trust on me. So I never was spamming like every hand I play. I never was trying to get a lot of attention from there. I was always trying to I think what I can do something in poker, like some strategy. I play a lot of hands doing this, and I came to them with like big text of my idea and examples. I never was just asking them to give me something. I was trying to uh, help me to find the way how to improve, because it's one of big problems with when you're communicating with people, because some people just trying to get a lot from you without putting their own work, and it's like I think it's big mistake for both sides.
And I think also, especially if you like, I usually say the quality of a coaching session, for example, if someone wants to do a coaching session with me, like the quality of how valuable that coaching session is going to be is depending on the questions that he's going to ask. And if you explain to, in this case, Antoa, Invoker, Stefan, which is quite an impressive lineup, if you give them your thoughts, they can actually correct you at a very important point in your thought process. It says, hey, this strategy works really well, only you're missing really one important thing. And then they can add so much value because you asked the right question, because you laid down your thoughts, right? So they cannot correct you on the play that you made, but on the underlying thought process behind your actual strategy, which is going to be so much more valuable. Do you still remember like one big aha moment you had with either one of these three where you filled out the whole sheet like, hey guys, I'm approaching poker like this is my strategy? Do you recall one big aha moment where one of these three guys gave you feedback like, hey, if you want to progress to the high stakes and play with us, this is something that you have to correct?
Like one of these moments I remember one super funny moment when I was like falling asleep. It was like 2 hours in night, and Antoha started to call me at Skype. Uh, I took the call, and he like instantly starts screaming on me, you fucker, you think I didn't see this? And he showed me some hand what I played from our player database who he was teaching, and it was like total random clicking by me, and he was like, why you didn't show me that hand? You played this like super garbage. And it was like super fun. So he like found in our players database hand playing by me super bad, and start like treating me. But it was like they had, I think, like 15, maybe 20 players coaching group, and they was I don't know, I still don't know it was trolling or not, but they was telling what they trying to like make from me butler who will play in like lower stakes than them with players against who they play. Like for example, like they play 5K plus with some guys, and this guy's playing 2K, and I will like play in 2K against these guys a lot, something like that. But they was understanding what I will anyway go to play like that against anyone or something like that.
Was there any big contribution that you think you made to their game? Were there any times where you sent it over this document with your thoughts that they were like, hey, this is actually very good, and we're actually going to implement this in our own game as well?
Yeah, there was some like good ideas, but I bring it to them, like some sorts of spam super small sizings, something like that. But on that days, I was just I can't even remember what I was bringing to them, because I was like thinking too much. I think I was thinking too much about strategy, and I wasn't thinking about mental side. So I had a lot of trying to play different styles. I was switching my strategy too often. Like I had even like period when I played in Zoom 200 with fall to free, but like 17 or something like that. I think not
17.
17. Yes, 1-7.
Okay.
Yes, and like and I was still like winning like 12 big blinds, red line, something like that, and losing on blue line. So like had a lot of different strategies, and I think every strategy from that was pretty bad. Almost every. Something was a bit close to what Stefan doing now.
Could you maybe give an example of something? Obviously, throughout my career, I've experimented with various things. A lot of things indeed didn't stick, especially also, I think when you started, there were already solvers, or no?
Yes, it was solvers. I was working in that, but I was always thinking what exploit will work better before the time when I start to be extremely paranoid what people will start to exploit me back.
Okay, because I remember, for example, I started playing way before solvers as well. So you were just trying out things, and then when solvers came out, it turned out certain things were indeed GTO.
Yeah,
they were approved, and certain things weren't. And as you mentioned, there were certain things that, in hindsight, were actually very good, and certain majority of things weren't that good. What was one of these things that indeed you still do today, or things that Stefan is doing today that you'll be like, hey, yes, we came up with that a long time ago?
Yeah, I think one of these things is like adding to your bluff range random unblocker hands. It's think what solvers also do. Like for big bluffs, you like with some frequency you have like hands what almost don't have equity, have unblockers, and it's only not only correct play because of solver, it's also good play from image side, because when people seeing what you bluffing like totally random hand, they might understand your range wrong in that spot at all, and it's super good.
Okay, interesting. So And like the reasons behind it were, for example, I might have done certain things in the past and then the solver also did it, but I did it for wrong reasons, but I ended up making the right play. Was that the same in this case, or you were consciously thinking about, no, I'm unblocking the folding range, so this makes a good barrel, even though I don't have equity? Because back in that time, equity was like, the standard.
I'm started to play like late enough to. I always had some solver practicing when I played. Like even when I started MTT, solvers was in already. So and I was more first time I was more focused on Flopzilla than solvers because I was telling this to everyone who I coach. What I still think, what you always need to start work with Flopzilla instead of solvers, because when you put everything manually, you remember better. Your brain more attracted to think what you do, and you will use it more easier later. So you like always need to do as much manual process as you can.
That's
At
actually
least
a
I
very
think
good
so.
point. What would be something that you were doing in Flopzilla?
I was just doing a lot of work to see how turn and river cards affects ranges and how ranges work. And it was like it helped me to understand some solver things like, for example, donk betting on super blank in something like ace x6 board. You playing check call, turn is deuce of suit, and solver starting to lead from big blind. And like working with Flopzilla helped me to understood why it's happened. Just because uh, open raiser can bet almost full range, you check call not full range, and on the black turn, your range of check calling is ahead of range of bet. And like if I never used Flopzilla, it will be much harder for me to understand things like this. I think just because with Flopzilla, I was just I do I did a lot there. I was reviewing hands there. I was reviewing how range play against range on different type of textures. I don't remember where I found, but I had some like text file with percents of how often different board textures appears, something like that, like top 10 of board textures. And I was just working with different ranges on the textures and put my tools on text file, and it helped me a lot to understand how equity changes on different runouts, on different situations, how it floats.
Yeah, you became very range aware, it seems, and obviously if you're range aware, like the ranges and the equity distribution obviously is a big driver behind certain strategies, right? The range setup is in a certain way, like you like you explained on the ASAP board. Yeah, he c-bets range, check calling generates a certain advantage. Therefore, we don't have air, he can have air, and we donk out. This is a consequence of understanding the mechanics behind it, where I think a lot of new school players who just try to copy the solver, they're not they start with the end product, whereas you start with the mechanics, right? You start in the beginning, and that leads you to think like, okay, well, if this is how the game works, then the strategical consequence must be that we will have a donk there. Whereas people who taught or learned poker before that, they might have learned like, yeah, you always check towards the razor. It's just a rule which works most of the time. But then you don't, if you don't understand why we're checking towards the razor, right, which is because of the equities, the range distributions, you don't know when the exception will actually occur.
Yeah, it's also like what I wanted to say. I think it's much better to like spend 10 hours on one spot than spend 10 hours on 10 spots, like most of the time, just because uh, you need not you need, like I think it's much better to try and to understand what solver doing what he doing, except of just to remember like what to do. Because if you try and to understand what machine doing, you will play better in spots what you never solved.
Yeah, because you're trying to learn why it's doing what it's doing, and if you understand the mechanism behind that play, you will also translate that knowledge into a future spot, which you haven't looked up, but given the fact that you know the mechanics behind the game, you've studied in, for example, Flopzilla, the equity distribution on a board like this, and you know what kind of strategical consequence an equity distribution like that will have.
Yeah.
Very
And also
interesting.
it
Mhm.
makes if you're studying like this, I think it makes poker more interesting, because if you're just trying to remember something, it's not super cool. But if you're trying to understand something, it's like uh, I, I don't know the word. Like you're just trying to watch on different sides. You put much more brain work to that, and it's like you can also have uh, happy from yourself if you find correct answer, because if you just remembering something, it's okay, you did the work. But if you find the answer to question what you was looking for, you got your dopamine and you got happy, because you think, okay, maybe I'm smart, maybe I'm not idiot, like after watching on same like screen for like 15 hours, and then you, oh yeah, now I understand what solver wanna do this, and you start to feel yourself better.
Yeah, and I think this approach also allows for more strategical creativity, right? Because if you understand why, then you also understand the why not. So you can actually adjust in various spots, which makes it very satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, uh if you're doing this, you can like, I think amplify is correct word. You can amplify how it will change if you add some locks, if you add some different ranges, something like that. You will be like easier to move. Like Stefan is pretty good example. He like sometimes he can do something just because he wanna do it. Like he don't give a fuck. He pretty quickly recognize uh, worst side of what he's doing, and if he understand what it's not be terrible, he will try just because he curious to do it. And I think it's pretty good. Like I'm most of the time I'm like doing the same. If I wanna just try something, I can like spend a bit of time to understand what it can't be super bad. And if it can't, I can do some EV mistake, but I try and I will see result, and it can help me later. Like a friend of mine with who I work most of the time on theory, he told funny thing like he told I can never station people on big pots because I can just review your database and see their ranges. Because like if I want to call, I call.
That's true. That's usually how it goes. Hi guys, Rene aka the Wacko here with a quick Mechanics of Poker 2.0 announcement, because we are currently open to receive 10 new players in our Mechanics of Poker coaching program. In our program you will get access to 80 plus hours of content in which we will explain you all aspects needed in order to become a more successful poker player. Now one of these of course is the technical aspect of the game, in which I'll be explaining you all the mechanics behind poker strategies. We'll be talking about GTO, exploitive play, with an extra focus on the why behind certain strategies and why the population has certain leaks. And to increase your win rate even further, we've recently added a river bluff and bluff catching section, so you can increase your EV when those pots become very big. Our mindset and performance coach Adam Carmichael, he took care of the mental game and performance section of this program, in which he will teach you everything you need to know in order to break through limiting beliefs, better handle your emotions, break free from tilt, and play your A game more consistently. And last but not least, we've added the management and optimization section in the program, in which we will give you various tips and tricks to make it more likely for your poker career to succeed, and how to continuously improve as a poker player. Now, on top of that, this concept is continuously evolving based on feedback and suggestions we get from our community. Next to all this content, you will have access to our exclusive Discord community, monthly live Q&A calls, and one-on-one coaching session in which we are going to be reviewing if you have been implementing the stuff that we teach you in the mechanics of poker correctly. So do you think you have what it takes to master the mechanics of poker? And will you take one of the 10 available seats? Go over to mechanicsofpoker.com and apply for the program, and maybe you will get a chance to work with me and Adam and make more progress in your poker career. But for now, without further ado, let's get back into more goodness in today's episode. So you've kind of walked through how you switch from MTTs to cash, and how you kind of walked through basically your journey. That was always very important, that you had people around you, right? That helped you in certain ways. That was a very big contributor. Adam, I know you've been silently waiting on the sideline. I think this is a habit of successful people, or a pattern with successful people, right? That they don't try to do it alone.
Yeah, I think it's a very common trend we see, where successful people very often find their way to be around the right people. And as Viktor was speaking there, it's very often a very good relationship for both ends, where you're not just sponging off people, you're actually contributing a lot. When you were speaking there, Viktor, I could tell the people who were around you were probably gaining as much as they were giving. So even when you're maybe below somebody on your journey, you still need to be contributing to their success over time. So yeah, I think you found the right people at the right time to encourage you, to learn from. And yeah, it seems to be a very common thread line on our podcast that people who make the top often don't do it alone. They find the right people, and that helps them a lot. So as I was hearing you were speaking there, Viktor, I noticed a trend of you seeking challenges, that you want to do hard things. And what came across to me listening was that you like to pick your own challenges. So for school, maybe not, you don't pick the kind of learning path, but for the games you're playing and poker, it was enjoyable for you because you seeked your own challenge, and you basically directed where you were going. You mentioned that poker and games in particular keep your mind working, and if it's interesting and complicated, you find it rewarding. So for you, when things are complicated, why do you feel like you like that? Because most people do the opposite. It's like, wow, that's complicated, let me do the easy stuff. But for you, a lot of the things you were speaking about, you seek complication and try to solve that. So why do you feel like that's enjoyable for you?
Yeah, I think like it's just always interesting to see how far you can go somewhere. And also, when you're trying this a lot, trying to find your top, you just starting to ignore like part of challenge. You're just going to do something because you a lot of times try to hit your top. Like as I said, I was practicing same hero a lot in Dota. I was trying to practice same tricks a lot in football. And at time when I started to play poker, I don't even most of the time I don't even think about challenges as like a challenge. I just was doing this because it's interesting. Like for example, I started to play cash like probably in late 2016, and in 2017 there was Masters League on Stars. It was like two limits, NL200 and NL2K, and it was reg games only, without reg, with leaderboard. And I didn't even waste the time to think, do I want to play it or not? I just started to grind this every day, and I won small one 200, and I was playing this just because it's interesting. And I never made any public challenge because I think it's like I don't need extra pressure for myself. So I was like, always, if I trying to do something, I maybe discuss this with friends, but I never trying to find some side bets or something to. I was understanding what I can improve my EV because of that. Like, for example, in 2020, I was thinking to challenge to play 1.5 million hands on 1K plus yearly, but I decided what it will be very bad idea to make public challenge, and also I failed. Like in September, I played uh, almost million hands, but I decided to stop challenge because I was too tired.
So I can tell you're somebody who likes to follow your interests, and that very often leads you into challenges. You also described yourself in our questionnaire as a bit of a gambler at heart. So we've got someone who your kind of character traits are generally going to lead you to take on a bit more risk than the average person, which brings us to the time when you were aggressively reg warring 5Ks on a 70K roll, which led you to go broke and have to rebuild your roll. So could you tell us a bit about that period of time? What was your kind of thoughts going into that shot ticket 5Ks when you started reg war with your 70K roll?
Yeah, it was like so I switched to cash games. I started to play directly from NL 200. I beat it Zoom 200. I was playing like first thing from what I need to start. It was what I was fully in poker. I was playing at least 10 hours daily, and our time I spent to hand review or to educating. So like you know, all my time I was spending on poker. It was like I think it was at least 250 hours every month at poker, something like that. So and in that time I was in group with Invoker and Antoha in coaching group. I beat it an L200. I won this stars challenge. I started to play an L1K a bit. It was work well too, and I took third place in some live event in Sochi. It was EPT or something like that, small one, 1K buy-in. So it was first time when I get a decent role, because before that I played in baking project and MTTs, and I was spending all money to have better life, because I started in pretty bad in bad life. So I was spending all money, and it was first time when I had some role, and I probably didn't understand how hard it will be to make it back. So I just I try. It was interesting to me to play 5K, and I just decided to take a shot. I lost like couple of binds there, not much, but uh, biggest problem in that was as I told, my mental part of poker was pretty weak. Like for pretty long of time, I was thinking what you need to do in poker is just play better, and if you will play very good, all will be fine. I was ignoring select always. I was playing too many hands hourly too. I was playing like a lot of time. I played 4 table Zoom 200 and 3 table Snap 200. So it's actually was like 7 table in Zoom, which is not very good too. And so I didn't even recognize how crushed I felt when I lost to these guys. And then I go to EPT Barcelona. I played without ITM. I bubbled main event, so I just decided to play it on K without selling anything. Uh, Lost this, played series with zero ITM, came back and have like maybe a 50K roll or something like that. And when I got huge downswing on Zoom 500, it was like nearly 80 buy-ins under EV run, which is, I think it's not super rare for Zoom 500, because I never selected it. I like, if it run, I play, and most of the time it was pretty bad, Zoom 500. So big downswing there, I think it's pretty common, but I feel myself like pretty crushed in that period.
So talk us through that period. How did you rebuild? So we've got from one stage to playing 5Ks and shot taking. I'm guessing that was a very exciting time where you've been studying OTB and other players. You're probably thinking, right, this is it. This is the big break. I'm going to play amongst the big boys. And then not long after, you're grinding 500 zooms and you're losing 80 buy-ins and your roll's just going down and down. So over a short span of time, we've gone from on top of the world, shot taking high stakes to wait a second, where do I build my roll from? So talk us through that low point when you were 80 binds below EV at 500s. How would you rebuild yourself, your confidence, and what were some of the issues you were facing during that time?
Yeah, I I did it like step by step. First, I recognize what I need to stop play Zoom 500 and go lower. When after that, I go to EPT Prague. This time I sold pieces for some tournaments. I played with zero ATM, and there was tournament like 5K buy-in, not EPT, but EIPT series. It was made by Party Poker, and I was just going with friends who is MTT regs. We go to that. It was in our casino. We go there. They see field, and field like was super bad. It was like 80 or 90 players and like two recreationals and something like that. And my friend joked like, "Oh, it's like feels like you laugh. You need to play this." And they give me free roll. Like I played for their money for like 13% or something like that. I finished at five or something like that. So got like 50K euro or something like that. Uh, I put this money to my roll and decided what I need to play from someone's money. I took backing. It was like January or something like that. And until probably like until August, I was going up and down. Like sometimes I was winning something. I took this money for living, so I wasn't building bankroll. And also, like I want something, we split money. Then I go to Zoom, and I still playing like 7 tables. So variance was like insane. I go up and down. It was fun because like I even saw some conversations on 2+2 where some people was thinking what I am semi-fish and some other people was thinking what I am using RTA, like because of my degen strategy. This time it was like 2018. I first time recognized what I need to start work on my mental health. So I found psychotherapist, and he told me what like I was working with him a lot, and we recognized what my main problem was what I'm playing, and I almost don't have anything from that, just competition, because I didn't bought myself a phone or something like that. I had like super old phone, and then like a friend of mine told me, "Dude, you winning money in poker, you're making good money, just okay, if you can buy, if you don't want to buy, I give you my phone." And like one of the first things what my therapist told me, what you should go and buy something for yourself to feel happier, just to feel what you playing for something, not just for competition. And also this period of time was pretty hard because my wife was pregnant. We was waiting for kid. And I read it a lot of literature about state of mind. And from that time, I decided what I need to start to be more professional. I decided to took break for like 1 month. I was just split it like 60% of time I was working on mental side, 40% of time I was working on theory. And when I decided to start to play Zoom 100, just to play a bit weaker field, to just feel myself better from like crushing people. I even wasn't sure what I will crash, but I mean, I was sure what I will crash, but it still variance there. And it from that point, it all worked well for me because I crashed Zoom 100 with like 14 BB, something like that. When I crashed Zoom 500 for like 1 month, when I moved to finally I moved to regular tables and show good results there. So like I started to grind in end of August 2018 after this break, after I fixed my mental problems, and I finished it that year at an L1K with shorting an L2K. I was still in backing, but I was in big plus, so I just decided to play until end of the year. And after a split, I had like 50K plus bankroll, something like that. Like in 2019, I had Sun already. I decided to just be a bit more calm, to play a bit less, at least try play a bit less. I was and like it was still good for me. I think
Wow, what
like
an interesting
I
story.
just don't sure how much I need to play because I like from that point I can tell about all my career, but maybe you have some questions. I don't know.
Yes,
But if
definitely. It feels like a very interesting part of your career, which I
yeah,
want to just reflect on. So yeah, you're basically shot taking these 5Ks to begin with. And at that time you thought poker was just a strategy game. Just play a good strategy and everything will work out. And as you ran into more problems, you had the self-awareness enough to realize, wait a second, my mental game isn't good enough. I'm playing too much volume. I've got leaks in my approach to poker, which is potentially holding me back. And what I really like about your story there is it sounds like you were able to problem solve it without the ego. Very often, like the ego gets involved and we kind of build a construct of why we're better than this. We're a high stakes player. We shouldn't have to work through this. But it sounds like you just went back down to say playing 200 NL and kind of rebuilt. You saw some help in a psychologist to kind of get to the root of your problems. And you realize, wait a second, mental game is what I've not been working on. I've been doing all strategy and that's now my leak. So you said you went for a period of spending 60% of your time on your mental game. So yeah, I'd love to you to share with us what you were doing during that time. So what were some of the things that you were working on in terms of your mental game?
yeah, it was I was reading books about psychology. I was working with psychotherapists. I started to meditate, and yeah, I did a lot of this, and then I understood what, like, even reading some not focused on mental side literature, it's helping to you to just watch wider on different things. Like as I as I told, like when we was talking about MTT and cash games, I was talking about like MTTs is wider, cash is deeper, but you need to watch both deep and wide. You need to not, if you are super focused, it might sometimes be too hard to not start making mistakes in our sides. So I just decided I was just reading like a lot about how brain works, how to fix this. Then I started just to read random literature just to put some food for my brain, which is not poker oriented.
So yeah, it sounds like you had to go from a bit of a gamer, maybe an amateur, semi-professional attitude to treating poker more professionally. And you were learning about the brain. You started to meditate more and to get a bit more calmness. I'm interested to hear how that impacted your poker career. What are some of the changes you noticed during that time when you were becoming more professional and you were working on your mindset? How did that transition into your game?
Yeah, I mean, it helped me a lot. It helped me to recognize what helped me in poker because, like, there's a lot types of inner motivation. What helps poker players? Like, some players play to protect themselves, to like better life, to get money. Some players love challenges. Some players play because mm, they wanna not like be famous, just to show people how good they are in something. And like my motivator, like my most motivator was inner anger. I was like trying to crush every enemy. I mean, I still love this. It's pretty fun about high stakes because a lot of players have like same driver. I think a lot of players, like when we in same table, we are enemies and we are like can be friends in real life. Like with Stefan, for example, we have like huge trash talks while we're playing. We hate each other in tables, but we are friends, still friends. And like it's same story with some other players.
So it sounds like you did some reflecting and you understood yourself better and you become more aware of what's driving you. And yeah, I think it's very common for high stakes players often differ from the rest of the poker world, where a lot of players want to make money, have success outwardly to their peer groups. And then when you get to a certain level, like yourself playing the very high stakes, very often just being the best version of yourself and challenge yourself against really tough competition and seeing who comes out on top. And I love that about poker and about sport, where you can be very strong rivals in the context of poker, trash talking each other, wanting to beat each other. But outside of poker, there's a mutual respect because you're very similar personalities who want to win, you want to get better. But in terms of a sport environment or a poker environment, you guys clash and you want to almost kill each other at the poker tables, but it's in a healthy way. So I like that. I feel like it's good for yourself to have understood what your driver was. And once you've got clarity on that, very often the path becomes a lot easier in terms of what you're trying to achieve. So what were some of the changes you made during that time? So I know leading to that point, you were playing a lot of volume. You were seeing a psychologist who was highlighting this fact for you. How did you differ your approach to poker after finding out what your inner motivation was?
Yeah, it just naturally helped me to better understand my weaker and my better sides. Like I was in the start of this journey, I was trying to play less volume. I was even starting to try to bump hunt. I was trying to skip reg wars, but then I understand. But like big volume and a lot of time playing and playing in tough lineups, it thinks what it's my best sides. It thinks what I'm doing well. Like I never had a super big win rate. Like in 2019, when I fixed my problems, I had pretty big period of time when I had like 8 or 9 BB per 100, but it was time when I was more. I had nearly 50-50 of educating and playing. But most of the time, I feel this time it was just preparing to reflect more and to start grind again. Like I was still 100%, almost 100% in poker, but I was preparing myself to hard times. So I will be more familiar when it happened. And also in that time, it was fun because I have good results. In 2019, it was like one of years where I almost didn't have any big downswings. It was like pretty good graph. But I was extremely paranoid what people start exploit me because I was winning red line. I was big station, a bit too much on needed. I had too light preflop, and I decided what I need to rebuild my strategy. And also, I was understanding what I want to grind a lot, and so I wanted to build strategy what I can be sure what it's working. So because when you're playing like total exploit, you need to be super confident or you will feel yourself very bad in hard times because you will think that you're making too many mistakes and you will need to make a lot of job in your own hand review to understand what you played well or not, and you will like steal this time from another opportunities to education. So I decided to make like challenge and wall to almost wall 2019 I was just rebuilding strategy. Like at summer I think I played like 60 or 70 hours for 3 months and spent on education 500 hours or something like that. Wow. Yes, and And then next year was, as I told, I played like almost million hands on an L1K plus. It was 2020. And like thing what I must say, we was talking about people who told me like Stefan and Walker and Tocha, but my main supporter was my wife because we had child this time and she's doing every routine for me because like as I told previously, it's super hard for me to doing something what I don't like. So like and she doing everything in that side. Like she's super. I
It's a
love
good
her
woman.
very much. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. It's so good to have a wife who supports you in that way. And obviously, she's got the child to look after whilst you're playing poker, and to be there for you to make your life easy so that you can do the things that you're interested in, which is learning poker at a high level. So it was amazing to have that support at home. And I know a lot of people would gain a lot of benefit from that. What I really found interesting from you speaking there was you had a strategy that was working. So you were going for a very exploitative style of play, but you already started to realize if you kept going down that route, at some point you get re-exploited. And this got you a little bit paranoid, you could say, but at the same time, it got you to go deeper into thinking, how can I rebuild my strategy? And as you were speaking, it reminds me of Tiger Woods when he was the world #1 golfer, and he was by far the best player in the world. And he decided to do something very counterintuitive, that he would completely redesign his tee off. He would completely redesign it. And people were like, you're the best in the world. What are you doing? Like your tee off's really good. Like you don't need to start your drive, learn to drive again. But he realized that in the future, he needed to be able to hit the ball further off the tee, and other players were going to be able to do that. So he spent months and months rebuilding his swing whilst being the #1 player in the world. So for you, you were rebuilding strategy in advance because you thought that other players would catch up or exploit you based on your style. So yeah, I think that's a really high level way of thinking. You're almost thinking moves ahead in the chessboard kind of analogy. And yeah, it shows like the kind of high level thinker you are. And you said you spend like 500 hours on rebuilding strategy compared to playing. So yeah, really, really amazing to hear that. And then it sounds like that set you up for 2020, which is what I really want to dive into. So 2020, as you've told us, was the year you played a million hands at 1K plus. Now, this came with a consequence, and you described this in your questionnaire as a rock bottom moment where you hit a burnout. So first of all, talk us through this kind of year overall, like playing this much volume, and how did you set out your days and weeks to implement and to execute on a million hands over the course of that year?
Yeah, it was like it's I can like say it is one day I was waking up playing. I got coffee, some small breakfast, playing for like 4 hours or something like that small session. When I sometimes watch one series of something with my wife, spend some time with my child, and when play like 8 to 10 hours session. Like so, I was playing every day, like at least 10 hours. I had one one break for like something like 10 days or something like that, but I played without weekends. I was playing every day, playing 10 hours plus. uh, I was reviewing hands mostly when I trying to fall asleep, just because after such sessions my brain was too hard to get asleep fast. So I was just watching on phone hands what someone sent me, watching hands what I marked, and I was just playing and playing. And at some point, I understand what I just tired too much. I wasn't I wasn't completely burned out, maybe, but I was understanding what it's not public challenge. It's no pressure on me. Oh, and also it's like fun what I ignore it again. Uh, I had like 4 months in a row. I had pain in my neck. What like I wake up with pain on my neck, and it's going up and up, and like in 2 hours I start to have pain in my head. But I was just use some tablets like what I don't know how to say, like against headache. So I didn't like I ignored pain for like almost half year. I just didn't do anything about that. When I recognized what it's super stupid, but I go to doctors only after half year, I think, and it was like in the end, I was in I moved to three doctors in my hometown. I did MRT and finished it in full checkup at Moscow. And they find out what I have something like called masked depression or something like that. It's like it's depression, but you don't feel yourself upset. You just have physical pain, something like that. Yeah.
It's almost the body
This,
crying out for you to change your ways, and you're taking
yeah.
painkillers and headache tablets to relieve it and pushing through. So yeah, I want to understand what your mindset was this year, because it sounds like you were a bit obsessed. You're playing 10 hours a day, playing weekends. Why were you so driven this year? What were you trying to achieve in 2020 that made you almost ignore signs of pain and just play through any?
Yeah, well, one of my, it was like different type of goals. First one, this was like trying to find the cap of what I can do, like try to find my limits. Second was one was what we decided to stay in Russia. We was like thinking to move somewhere, but then we decided what we love our hometown. So I decided to build house of my dream, which is now sounds like big mistake in situation what happens in the world now. But we decided to do that. So I played like for myself for like fun and find my limits and for building house of my dream. And also like um, it's like funny to say like I think I'm gambler, but I'm gambler but like I like to think a lot about what I doing and why I doing this. So a big part of this challenge what was I was understanding what if I want to build house of my dream and go up or on limits, I need to win a lot because I don't want to stuck and at an L like 5k and lower to grind and to have just good life and build house. I wanted to be ready to play with anyone in higher stakes. So I understand what I need big role for that, and it was like one of drivers too, and maybe it was one of reasons why I burn out before this because I had like in that time was running some big games like 40k, 100k, 200k, and I finished it this year. I played million hands with like 5 something EVBB and 3.9 real BB, real 100% per 1%, and it's ended up like I had nearly a million under EV, and it was also like big pressure because I understood what I can't play wall carrier like that, like 24/7. So it was like putting extra pressure on me also. Maybe it was one of things what burned out me faster. I didn't feel like oh I'm so unlucky or something like that. I was just understanding what it took some opportunities from me.
Yeah.
But like it's okay.
So it sounds like you took on this challenge very consciously. You had a very clear objective, which was first of all to find your limits, find what your cap of your potential is and where you could go in poker. And then you had building your dream house. So with these two things fueling you, you just wanted to play all hours of the day. Every hour available, you wanted to put volume in. So as we're going to talk about in a second, this led to you hitting a burnout moment. And you talked about in 2021, so the year following this million hands that you played, you had a bad start of the year. January to May, you said you lost 500k, and this basically came as a consequence of potentially grinding too much. So talk us through like how you were first of all getting through that time. So say 2021, when you went on this downswing, were you still playing at the same kind of volume, and how were you pushing through this kind of turbulent time?
Yeah, it was a bit fun. Like at 2020, like at September, I feel like I almost burn out. So I play in class until November. when November to December, I played a lot again and back my passion to the game, and decided from 2021 to play less, start to learn crypto, start to put more time with my family, uh, and then started huge downswing, and some like I think it was like pretty big amount of this year when I playing same or more than previous year. So like plan was to play less, but when I was on downswing, I just decided, okay, fuck, I need to crush them. It was like it's clearly it was most more ego thing. I just I was feeling what I wanna calm a bit, but I can't calm when I'm not on peak, like because I still was super competitive. Like I'm still super competitive. I just wanna play.
Yeah, so it sounds like when your back's against the wall, things aren't going well for you. You double down. You want to work harder. You want to get yourself out of that situation. And for you, that meant, yeah, grinding a lot of hours. You said before that one of your strengths is playing high volume in tough lineups. And very often when life gets tough, we revert to our strengths. What am I good at? How do I get myself out of this? And yeah, it sounds like for you that led you to play a lot more volume than you planned on playing in 2021, which at first had a bit of a downside. You definitely had a tough 5 months, January to May, but then you managed to get it all back. Right, so get it all back. So tell me through that time and what changed when you started to go on that kind of upswing. Was it just variance, or did you make any changes when you went back on that upswing to regain that
It was like this series was just pure swingy. I lost a lot because was huge downswing. When I won a lot because was upswing, and it was like mm, it's funny thing because like a lot of discussions on like who is best player, who is good, who is bad, and like maybe it's like my PTSD or something like that. But I always telling what you can't say anything about someone's game if you never saw him in huge downswing, because like anyone can play good when he run good. I mean, not just on run when like he run correctly to EV. It's much easier when you have like super swingy periods. Yeah, so I had good upswing in whole summer, and this summer was super dry. There was almost like I think 80 or 90% of reg wars or something like that. I just win a lot from them, and okay. And like after I did this, I decided to put more time on crypto and put more time on traveling. I go to Vegas, play a couple of events there, go to Disneyland with family. I played some big events on Cyprus. It was Super High Roller Ball, I think. So I just from after I reached my peak of bankroll and of my self confidence, I talked with few friends, and like all of us, we think what poker now it's like on state where you can took pretty long break, and then you need just like months or something like that to get in good form again if you are good now, because game is like it's not solved but it's not changing very hard. It's like only small changes, only small new things. So from like end of September, or it's like even it was from start of September to May, I almost didn't play any hand. I was still doing some reviews just because it was interesting to see what guys doing when I'm not playing. Just like I was it was funny. I was like watching some hands from our games, like watched streams of friends, and I was waiting, like, okay, maybe they show some new tricks, so I will be like, oh fuck, I need to go back to poker faster, so I will be not like super far behind. But nothing like that happened, luckily for me.
What I found interesting about your story there is as you said, like you find a lot about poker players in terms of who's a very good player, in terms of how they deal with downswings and how they respond, how the game responds to that, and also how they show up during those times. For you, it sounds like you really doubled down on playing and studying whilst you were in the kind of peak downswing, and then you got out of that downswing. It's very interesting that at that kind of peak moments, say financially or coming out of the bad patch, then you started to get a bit tired and bored with poker. And I feel like for you, the way you've spoken to us today, it sounds like you don't like doing things unless you're interested, unless you're curious. So for you, when you decided to take a step back from poker, it sounds like you spoke with some friends to make sure, like, all right, am I making the right decision? Is this suicide, or am I going to be okay? So tell me for like how you felt removing yourself from poker, because as you've talked to us today, you're someone who wants to be the best. You pride yourself on being like at the high level. So when you took a step back from poker through being tired and burnt out, how would you deal with that mentally in terms of filling the void that poker had for you?
So I was just pretty curious by crypto. It was pretty interesting. I started to dive deep a lot. I was like, I read it everything what I could find. I found groups of people who working there. So yeah, I just found another thing to be obsessed of. But in the end, like why back to poker? It's because after like half year in crypto, I understood what it's good thing to make money. It's a good thing to improve our world, but it's not interesting. Like at least for my mindset, it's not very interesting. So I probably will like instead of market like now, I will a bit focus it on poker. When I will maybe like mix it, and some periods I will work only on crypto, I think, but probably I will just for my live I will play poker or do something like that, because crypto is like it's more like job. It's there is some interesting things, and also you need to be in to don't miss something big and interesting. Maybe crypto will change and some new things appear what will be interesting too, but for now it's like a bit boring, and poker is not getting bored. Like I was in Triton, and it's super new level. It's like very interesting to be there. Even if you're tired from uh, online games, you can game to something like that, and you like will be super inspired and super interesting to play, because everything there was super good.
So this stage of your career, after you took that break, did some of your crypto stuff, you realized crypto maybe didn't engage the mind in the same way poker did for you. So for you right now, like what is it about poker that makes this game so fascinating? You're already playing like as high as you can play. What makes this game still get your mind intrigued and interested and want to put time into to learning more?
Yeah, because I still have a lot of questions when I play. It's like still a lot of things what you can dive deeper, you can think more, and it's super interesting. Like after I play it live and meet a lot of high stakes guys, it started to be even more interesting to play against them, because you see how smart I am, and like most of them are younger than me, and it's like it's funny feeling, because I probably one of oldest player who playing a lot now, and in same time I started to play poker later than ours. Like most of them playing like 10 plus years, but younger than me, and it's making it even more challenging for me, because I think like I'm a little bit underdog by a lot of terms, but I think I still can be competitive.
Comes back to this kind of thread line that's been going through of you seeking challenges and you find it interesting to compete against other high-level people. So a lot of players might get intimidated when they go to meet other live players and play high-stakes games. You realize everyone's really smart. Some of these guys are really young and got a lot of potential. But for you, it's actually the opposite. You're like, all right, this is what I'm made for. And like again, the strength you said, high volume in tough lineups. That's what you've found out about yourself. So I like that over time you've learned to kind of trust yourself, trust your instincts of what you should be doing, and when things are interesting for you, you just go in that line, you go in that direction. So yeah, really great to hear.
It's also the thing like when we was talking about downswings, and I forgot to say like people seeking for different cues from downswing, and like for me it was always just to put more work on. Like if I'm like in average, a lot of people playing more than they run good and play less than they run bad. And like when I run bad, I just put more and more work on myself. Like I play more, I review more, I watch more, I try more. It's like I think it's not super good because for mental state, better to play when you run good because you like have much more dopamine. You're happier when you play. But as I told, like my driver is Anger, so I think it's not super good, but it's really super hard to change myself, and I don't want to do it. So I just trying to not feel bad about that. Like I am not feel bad from that. I when I have downswings, I am not like sitting like that and trying, oh fuck, help me. I just okay, I will fight.
I would say it's a very positive character trait because if you think about it, like you said, everyone could play great poker when they're winning, but when things are getting bad, when you're in a downswing, that's very often when people cave, they do less, they start feeling helpless, going into a victim mindset. But for you, you do the opposite. You work a lot harder during downswings. So if we play that out over the course of your career, every time things got tough and hard, you studied more, you played more, you learned more during those times. So it's almost like if you look at your growth as a poker player, every time things went hard, you got better and better. So this almost makes you kind of bulletproof going forward, because when things get hard, you do more, you show more. Obviously, when things are going good, yes, we could argue that you could maximize your EV more by putting in long hours when you're in a good cognitive state. But in terms of like growing and improving, the fact that you double down when things get hard is a great trait. It's a huge upside. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't worry about that. I'd actually say a lot of players need to do the same and work on how to develop that attribute. It doesn't always mean during a downswing you play a lot. You might actually just dive deep into your game and try to improve, but at the same time, finding ways to work harder when things aren't going well in order to get yourself going in the right direction again. So yeah, really good.
Yeah,
All right, Renes, for yourself.
sorry, one more thing. It's like it's what I found out not that long ago. What in a situation like mine, you need to understand what you need to be very focused on your mind, because when you work more in downswings, it's your like your passive brain part might start think that you're very unlucky because you put a lot of volume when you run bad, and like your brain recognize that okay, I run bad pretty a lot, but it's just because you put more pressure on, and you can't ignore it because you will have you might feel yourself unhappy if you just ignore that thing.
But very good point. Very good point. So yeah, what you're saying there is when you're on a downswing, your vision's a little bit clouded and you can almost assume that you're running bad because things aren't going your way. If you put lots of volume in during a downswing, you might deceive yourself into thinking that, or you might perceive that situation as, I'm running bad, I'm getting unlucky. I can picture having many conversations with poker players who almost feel a bit disheartened by the way things are going. They're playing more poker than ever during a downswing, but because things just feel bad during a downswing, they almost magnify their problems and think things are going worse than they are. So yeah, I think it's definitely good to be aware of how your mind's responding to that during a downswing. And also, like some players, play more volume is the solution. Other players, it's like, no, like work more in your game. But I think the kind of overall kind of theme of put more work in during a downswing, try to solve the problem. What's going on? Why is this downswing occurring? Sometimes that means going internal and reflecting on yourself. Other times that means working on your strategy. Other times that's means showing up consistently and being at the tables to level out the variance. But yeah, I think it's very good to think about the problems that can come up as you're trying to go through that.
Hi guys, Rene aka the Wacko here with a quick Mechanics of Poker 2.0 announcement, because we are currently open to receive 10 new players in our Mechanics of Poker coaching program. In our program you will get access to 80 plus hours of content in which we will explain you all aspects needed in order to become a more successful poker player. Now, one of these, of course, is the technical aspect of the game, in which I'll be explaining you all the mechanics behind poker strategies. we'll be talking about GTO, exploitative play with an extra focus on the why behind certain strategies and why the population has certain leaks. And to increase your win rate even further, we've recently added a river bluff and bluff catching section so you can increase your EV when those pots become very big. Our mindset and performance coach Adam Carmichael, he took care of the mental game and performance section of this program, in which he will teach you everything you need to know in order to break through limiting beliefs, better handle your emotions, break free from tilt, and play your A game more consistently. And last but not least, we've added the management and optimization section in the program, in which we will give you various tips and tricks to make it more likely for your poker career to succeed, and how to continuously improve as a poker player. Now, on top of that, this concept is continuously evolving based on feedback and suggestions we get from our community. Next to all this content, you will have access to our exclusive Discord community, monthly live Q&A calls, and one-on-one coaching session in which we are going to be reviewing if you have been implementing the stuff that we teach you in the mechanics of poker correctly. So do you think you have what it takes to master the mechanics of poker? And will you take one of the 10 available seats? Go over to mechanicsofpoker.com and apply for the program, and maybe you will get a chance to work with me and Adam and make more progress in your poker career. But for now, without further ado, let's get back into more goodness in today's episode.
All right, so Rene, for yourself, have you got any peak rock bottom moments? I'm not sure if I've asked you this before, but any moments of your career you look back on and go, that was the toughest part of my career?
Where do you want to start, Adam?
The peak.
The peak rock bottom. I would say the peak rock bottom. I mean, I went broke many times. Not many times, maybe that I can now recall of twice. And I thought one of the hardest ones was, and actually this was actually a question that I was also going to ask Viktor, so it's a good question that you asked me, is like when things were not going my way, went broke, but in the same time, in my case, I was living abroad. I was living in Brazil. I was married to my wife. I had to take care of my wife, also financially, as she was just focusing on her studies. So that added a lot of pressure to having to perform well in poker. And obviously, when you're trying to play and there's more pressure on it, and you're not playing well, or you're in a downswing, that's not really a great, how can I say, a great environment to stimulate good performance. And I was wondering how, because Viktor has praised his girlfriend for always being on his side, how did she respond to you going broke for the first time? For example, my wife, she's definitely very risk averse. And obviously, as us as poker players, we understand the game a little bit better. We understand that statistically, it's very unlikely, but it can happen. How did she respond, especially when she's pregnant? And I assumed that she was relying on you for a source of income. How did she respond? And how did you respond with the pressure of having to take care of someone? So your poker performance, people are relying on your poker performance. Where before I was, for example, married, if I would screw up, I would just screw up for myself, and that's fine. But now you're suddenly screwing up for both your wife and your future child. How did you cope with that extra pressure, or did you feel that extra pressure?
Yeah, this time was pretty hard. But I most fun thing in that. My wife, she don't know much about poker. I mean, just last in this year, or last year, I don't remember, probably last year, I won EPT in Sochi or something like that, and this was first time when she watched poker TV translation, and it was like first time when she recognized what I'm like sort of known somewhere, because we don't discuss poker and something like that, and when I had hard times, I was very stressed. I was thinking what I'm failing for my family and for myself. And like my wife, I don't know how to explain it. She was stone cold calm. He was like, I talked it to her. I told like what I don't know, what it's super bad, what happened, and something like that. And she told like, okay, you will be good anyway. Like she's like she believes in me much more when I believe in myself or someone believes in myself. And when I recognize it, it's like it's more when someone can give me. She just like she just believe me in 100%. She's super sure what any bad thing what can happen, I can handle it and I can go through it.
Yeah, that's I think yeah that definitely releases the pressure, right? In moments when you're in doubt about yourself, that someone is there to reconfirm, like, hey, listen, we will be okay. Just to ease your mind, I think is huge, because from that moment, you can calm yourself down a little bit and actually start to play good poker
I,
again.
I even was like a little bit mad because I was telling her, okay, I lost a lot of money. We're building house. We have trouble, and she's like, so what? Like, you will make it back. Like, what's the problem? And it was like, I was okay. Like, everything ruined. Everything is bad. I don't know what's going on. And like, she was super calm. Like she asked me, like, do you think like you can handle it? Like, of course I can. Like I will handle it. And why you like Andrew? Why you mad? All will be good. And I was like, okay, fuck. If
Maybe
she
she should
believes it,
become a
I
mental
will.
game coach for poker players. Can I do a session with your wife sometimes with a bit of downswing?
I don't think she will believe in anyone.
She doesn't believe in
who
anyone
will-
else. Okay,
Yeah,
okay, good point, good
yeah,
point. That's how it's supposed to be. That's that loyalty, right?
yeah.
I'm curious. You were talking about at that phase when you were trying to jump up to like the real high stakes, the nosebleed stakes, that you went through the process of rebuilding your strategy. You mentioned studying for 500 hours. That's quite a lot. Uh, I'm curious, how does rebuilding your strategy look like, and what do you spend 500 hours of studying on? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. Most of the time, I just watching different spots on Solver. I was trying to watch pretty deep and making notes of what I see there, what I think is working like that. Also, when I saw something weird, I was just trying to make some how to say it, like some tests when I just put something what can never happen, some like extremely small range, extremely weird ranges, just trying to see how solver changes his mind in some different spots. It's like I think a lot of players on low stakes and like still have this thing in their mind what they must do something. They like you might hear this a lot, like I must call this hand because if I'm not calling here, I am overfolding. But like I always telling to these guys, okay, just put to your opponent like range of set plus, and you always have bluff catcher, and your opponent have only set plus. Solver never call. You didn't must do anything. You need just to play a spot like it is, and this toy. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Remember, it's toy game. It's called toy game. Yes. So I was doing toy games. I was doing a lot of solver stuff with knots, and also like most of my work now, it's reviews of my opponents.
Yeah, I think this is especially important when you reach very small pools and nosebleeds where everyone already has a certain level of strategical knowledge, right? Everyone has studied the solver, and at some point, the edge that you can gain by studying even more solver, at some point, it's just so minimum compared to if you indeed study certain tendencies of your opponent and come up with more exploitative game plans around it. Or we had, I think it was Jay and Big Joe who we had on, who was really trying to pay attention, like who's a bit tilted this month, right? And how does a downswing, you mentioned playing one a downswing, how do people react? How do their games change when they're in a downswing compared to an upswing, for example? So you kind of know what to expect a bit more. Is this kind of stuff that you're looking for as well?
Yeah, it's like when you reviewing your opponents, it's like it's pretty interesting because like you see so like some mistake on him, you go into solver, you put in, you see how you might exploit him, but the next thing you do, it's your put your exploits against GTO to see how fragile your new strategy will be. So you always need to understand like if your exploit will fall, wanted will be worse for you comparing to do nothing. And it's like always like some ways to double check how it will work, and it's very interesting. And also when you're reviewing opponents, like you're doing the same thing. You don't just watch on frequencies, you're trying to watch on frequencies plus showdowns plus their general strategy to understand how he thinks. You don't trying to like, okay, this guy fall to free bet 5% smaller than GTO, so I will free bet him wider. No, you're just trying to like put yourself in his head.
Yeah, it's very interesting. What you were referring there to was kind of you're estimating the risk reward of your exploit. Like how much does my exploit works if it works, but if it backfires, how much does it loses? And does the risk balance out the reward sort of?
Yeah, I think it's like it's think what you must to think. You can't think what your opponent's idiots. You like you can tell them what they are idiots. You can trash talk, but you never need to underestimate them.
Have you learned this throughout the hard way?
Yes.
Could you maybe give an example?
Like first time was when I crashed. No, not crashed. When I lost on 5K, when in like 2017, and when like uh, I I see just couple of it always couple of showdowns, you know. Like for example, I still playing a lot against Renes, and like I was think what he is overfolding a bit. And when like in 2 sessions in a row, he made pretty light calls against me, and okay, okay, it started to like change something.
Yeah, at some point also analyzing, especially it's interesting when you analyze people's games, especially if these players are also analyzing your games, then it's almost becomes more worthy to analyze your game to kind of expect how they're going to play against you instead of you, because their game is kind of a accumulation of exploits that they make versus various players, so they don't really represent anything. Whereas if you think at some point, I did this as well a lot when I was battling high stakes, to be very aware of your own statistics. And if you know that someone is a bit more an exploitative player, you can actually kind of already ahead think of, okay, if I would be playing versus myself, would I be over bluffing in this spot, for example? Like you mentioned that you tended to be a bit too much of a station, right? You're redlining too much. So you could already think, okay, if I would be playing against myself and this guy is an exploitative player, is he likely to over bluff me? Well, most likely not, right?
Yeah, but like it's also a fun thing because like you can be stationed in different spots. You always need to think about how deep your opponent analyzes you. Because like, for example, you can be stationed in most of spots, but some spots you have your fault against population and your opponent might see this, and you always need to like, it's really a lot of levels of how deep you can dive. So yeah, it's always spending a lot of time to see what people doing against each other and what people doing against you personally. Like there is like a lot of people doing a lot of French researches now in hand to note. It's like super good tool. And one day I understood what I don't think I first who did this, but I did range research only through my database to compare how different reactions in most of spots people doing against each other and against me. And also did like then I did some researches against different type of fields playing to each other and our stuff like that, because it's, as you told, you need to understand how people playing against you, against each other, against our players, and how it affects their stats and their strategy.
That's very interesting indeed. Like,
and it's it's almost part of answer to Adam question about why poker is still charming for me, because like still a lot of questions like this.
Yeah, because it's not necessarily, for example, GTO looks at a spot in isolation in a solver, whereas indeed if you mix in player profiles and how they perceive certain spots, like for example, people who study a lot of data, they will have clear spots where, okay, on these type of scenarios, population tends to overbluff, underbluff, Then if you start to kind of flip your strategy, you start to underbluff in the overbluff spot and start to overbluff in the underbluff spots. Yeah, then you get to a whole nother level. And you get that indeed, like, you know, certain players make certain reads. Okay, yeah, this is at some point when you play against very good players, they know, okay, yeah, this is a classic overbluff spot. Now what do I do? You know, I cannot overbluff because he knows it's a clear overbluff spot, so he's never gonna fold. But then if he sees you every time giving up, there's like, okay, he's not bluffing the classic overbluff spot. And then you get exactly the levels that you were talking about. And this is, I guess, what makes you keep coming back.
Yeah, this type of metagame flows, it's super interesting. Like I started to notice this when I was grinding Zoom 200, because it was like, I remember like couple of months, everyone playing with super high c-bet. When people started people check raise, switch it from like 8 on the flop to 22. Then some people started to adding min free bets on the flop. When people just decided, okay, I just started to c-bet less, and this like going, like it's like flow. It's going in, out, people changing strategy, and like it looks pretty beautiful. It's pretty interesting.
What is you're describing like a trend where you see population using strategies and then population trying to use counter strategies and then another counter strategy is being made, right? And that's kind of the flow that you're describing. What is a current flow that you are experiencing throughout poker this year?
Now people, I think people understood pretty good borderline of solver calling hands. So people station pretty well. Like there's a lot of people who call pretty correctly, and also a lot of players under bluffs in most of spots, because they just see what people focus it on Collins part, and so you like most of goal of bluffs is to get called wide enough. So people going to under bluff now, and it's funny to see like different players trying to attack different spots. Like no one can play just like super neat. Everyone trying to keep bluff frequencies, but they like splitting it differently, and it's pretty fun because it make some unbalances, but these unbalances like not super exploitative, but it's very hard for brain, because if you wanna play better than field, you need to focus on every opponent what you play. Because like everyone in general, if you watch on stats, it might look like everyone playing almost same game, but they just have small tricks in their pockets, and it's always interesting to try to find it.
Yeah, it's what you said, right? Just a stat, just the frequency doesn't include the texture. It only shows the frequency. It doesn't show the range composition of exactly the frequency in that spot. So is it too value heavy? Is it too bluff heavy? You know, are you going to be bluffing in spots where no one ever bluffs? Is you know, or do you just keep on bluffing in the obvious bluff spots? Yeah, it's indeed a level. I have to say, I did also, if I can say one trend that's different from in the past, that's now is indeed that most players that I face station, or at least, you know, the trend is that people are fighting more for pots over the years. Whereas in the past, a couple of years ago, the trend was more that people tend to fold. So aggression was the way to go. Then the pool started to be very aggressive. Then the pool responds, and now everyone starts to become a station. And now you have to kind of find nuances within when do I station? You cannot just be a station for the sake of being a station. Is it then also like, I'm curious in terms of players, what do you think sets a nosebleed reg, well, let's say 10K NL plus reg apart from like a 1K to 5K reg, for example?
First one will be discipline, I think. Like discipline to play in in same state for a long time, and also in poker part, it's understanding of ranges, because like people who play lower, they just count combinations slower, and they just don't understand equity well enough, I think. So they just making they may making like call not because they understand EV of this action, just because they see like, okay, he probably bluff enough, and that's already reason for these players to call. They sometimes putting themselves on spots. They're like their bluff catcher not good enough about against range because bluff have high equity or something like that. They don't understand realization of equity pretty well. But for now, a lot of players of 1K and L500 pretty well, playing pretty well. And there's like also big difference between young players who playing these limits and players who play there just because they're stuck and don't want to go further, because young ones, a lot of young ones, I think playing pretty well. They just don't roll enough and they just don't experience enough. Maybe they have mental problems. Maybe they just most of them just need time to move to the top.
Yeah, there's no shortcut to the top, right? If you go faster than you're allowed, at some point you will experience something and you will get knocked down. Kind of what you were experiencing, right, when you were taking the 5K shots. I remember also from a confidence perspective, I feel like you have to grind a certain stake for a certain amount of time and put a win rate for you to confidently say like I belong at this stakes. Where if you go too fast, you might mentally identify yourself as a 500 zoom rack and you're suddenly playing in a 5K game, then your confidence at that stake is just too fragile. Whereas if you start losing a little bit, you don't really feel like you belong at that stake yet, so you will be forced to move down. And like I said, yeah, the only way is with time, right? People have to learn to be a bit more humble, as you mentioned. The ego can get in the way. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
you can trash talk people. You have to learn to manage your money. You have to make certain mistakes in order, to
Yeah, it's also depends pretty hard on personality, like on how you uh, how you recognize poker at all. Like as I told, like for me it's just an hour game, so I'm easy to shot, easy to feel myself stupid, easy to understand what I'm not good enough somewhere, and I'm not feel myself super stressed when I'm not good enough. Like once I had like birthday and I decided what like best what I can do is give myself 20K to go reward 10K just because it will be interesting. Like so I just told myself, okay, you can lose 20K on 10K reward. It was like Linus, me, Stefan, and Kluka played something like that. And I just was super easy. I finished it around break even, but I already was counting what I left this money on the table, and most of the time it's like that for me. I just when I playing, I'm just focusing on the game, and I don't feel super stressed. And also afterwards, like if I shooting something, I losing. I don't losing my confidence after this. I always like think I will repair this even in hardest times. And for some people it's just too hard. I like even Dudi, he was on your podcast and he told, but for him it will be super hard to go to higher stakes if part path will be harder. But it just depends on personality.
So what are some of the personality traits you think that made you this successful?
Uh, I don't know. I think maybe it's it's always like a lot of different pieces. Like some people who are around me, like some pretty unhappy childhood, and like a lot of things in my life made me like stoic a bit. So like I'm not focusing on hard times. I mean, I'm not uh, I'm not feeling too much pain, I can say, from some bad things. I can't say what I'm extremely happy, like some people they're like super positive or something like that. I'm not super positive. In hard times, okay, I know it's hard times, but I just must go through it. And that's all. I'm not trying to show myself more happier when I am or something like that. I just always telling what sad things are happens. It's life. What else can I do? If I will focus on how it's hard or how I am unhappy, it can't help me anyhow. So I just need to go further and trying to do my best. Just keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, there's a definition of stoicism here. You acknowledge, you accept the situation for what it is, then you realize, okay, it's only perception. How do I handle this situation? That's like, the concept of focus on what is in your control in this case. I think throughout this podcast, I heard you say many times when it came to adversity and shitty things happening, you said it was fun. Fun thing happened. You every time labeled it as fun, right? And also with the downswing, you kind of saw downswing also as like a motivator or as a necessity, right? To study more in your game. So this is what I kind of mean with the perception. How do you perceive a downswing? Are you going to try to learn from it? Or are you going to try to use it as motivation, right? In this case, you get angry because you're competitive. You don't want to lose, which, can have its good side, it can have its dark sides. But it does enable you to use a situation like that and actually fuel you and give you energy in order to improve.
Yeah, it's like it's mix of all of this, and I also like always when you watch retrospectively, you understand what almost every bad thing what happened in your life helped you to become stronger. And the main thing it's like to understand in momentum what when you in shit situation, what if you do well, if you don't break, you will be good anyway. So like you just need to accept that it's new challenge, it's new part of your life. Like every second our life is changes, you're in new state, and you just need to try to be focused on doing good things. And also it's like I think it's work in outside world too. You just all you need to do is focus to be a good person for yourself, and if you're a good person for yourself you will be good for each other, for other peoples. You might help them, you like to help people. Like I think everyone inside want to help our people be happier, because when you see how another person smiling, it's always good for you.
Yeah, you mentioned actually that this was also one of your motivations to come on the podcast. You try to educate other players, share your experience, so maybe their road becomes a little bit easier. But the main thing that I thought was very interesting that you said, I want to help people become happier. Is this like often when we begin in poker, we're just so focused on, reaching success. We want certain things materialistic. We want money. At what point did you realize in your career, like, actually the end goal of life is to have a happy day to day? When did that moment sort of click for you?
When I understand what I can do things what I love for pretty long period of time, and it won't affect me in financial part. So like if I want to travel, and I can go travel. If I want to play, I will play. And if I want to spend like a lot of time with my family, and I still won't go broke or something like that. And also when I understand what I can use, like use time how I want to use it.
Use time how you want to use it. So it's kind of freedom that you're describing.
Yes.
Be able to do whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do, whatever you want to do it.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And also, like, very big part of why I love poker as work, not just as game, but as work. It's what you can contact only with people what you like. You don't forced to like be good for your boss or something like that. You just can pick up people pretty wisely. You can spend time only with people what interesting for you, and what you have really great time with people what around you.
Yeah, you don't have to deal with people. My wife, for example, she's an orthodontist and she sees patients all the time. And she sometimes tells me story about people flipping out and stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm very happy I don't deal with people on a daily basis. So that's definitely an advantage if you're an online poker player.
Yeah, it's weird feeling, because in general I love people, but it's mostly until I contact them.
Okay.
I mean, like when you hear all these stories from casual work or from some bureaucracy or something like that, and then you're like going to tilt, because why you can just do normal things. But on the other way, like I was reflecting a lot about this, and I understand like it's super hard to be very happy when you most of the time you're forced to do something what you don't want to do, even if you like it. Like if we talk about poker, someone might love poker, but if you must play something or do something, it's much harder to be happier. And also, like poker players have a great privilege to control their time. So you have some free time to meditate, to read something, to discuss something with smart persons deeply, not small talk, but like big conversation. And it's this thing is like priceless, I think. It's best what we can have in our life, to share experience and read something. It helps you to understand better what's going on around you, like both mechanics of life, and all of this.
Reflecting on your poker career, what is something that poker, being a poker player, taught you that you did not expect?
In bad or good side?
Both.
In bad side, it's emotions. Like biggest trouble after 2020, when I grinded a lot, it was super hard for me to feel happiness. I mean, in general, I happy. I like how I live in and all this stuff, but I mean, like it was super hard to get happy from random stuff. And uh, I break this when we was in Disneyland, and I was watching on my son who was watching show there. So like it was great show, and I find myself what people watching on the show, and I just watching on my son reactions, and it was big moment of happiness what helped me to start to feel happiness again. And good thing about poker, it's time, of course, because you can use it much more wisely, because you can make your own schedule, you can make breaks, you can even if in things like reading, when you poker player and you find good book, you can stop playing for a couple of days and read this book deep enough. When you're working on normal job, you come after job, and you know the state of mind when you like reading something, and 5 pages you just understand what you don't remember what you just read. You just too Your brain is too hard. And when you poker player, you can skip these periods because you can just take breaks. And it's like it's think what I think everyone is need, just some time for yourself. Whatever you're doing, I think it's big mistake of a lot of people trying to spend all their time correct, try to spend all their time to become better. Like sometimes you can just lean on your bed doing nothing, and it will be the best thing what you can do now.
Yeah,
And
which can sometimes be very counterintuitive, right? If you were trying to progress to a certain goal or you want to get out of a certain situation, doing nothing from time to time can make you
yes,
quite restless. But as you have experienced, you know, there's a certain, at some point you need to take a break, else you will sort of burn yourself out. Adam, I'm curious. Like, I think struggles with emotions in general, right? I think in society, men have more trouble with dealing with their emotions than women, right? Just as a stereotype, oh, we have to be men, we cannot be emotional. And then poker kind of enhances that even further because you cannot show any of your emotions. That's kind of the status quo of being a poker player. Any tips for players how to deal with emotions? Should we let emotions in? Should we close ourselves up for emotions? How do we deal with emotions?
Well, I find it very interesting that Viktor phrased it as emotions were the bad side of the lessons learned through poker. And I feel like a lot of players can relate to that when they start playing for a living and professionally. All of a sudden, all these emotions come to the surface that they haven't experienced throughout their life. Almost like, why am I feeling insecure? Why am I feeling anger? Why am I feeling rage? When they're generally a calm person. But all of a sudden, the cocktail of the pressure of poker or your identity being tied to being good at something, and poker is just the perfect breeding ground to bring emotions to the surface. Now, the problem most poker players face is they don't want to go through this process of learning to deal with emotions, and they want to numb them or push them aside. So you end up going through a phase where you try to be quite robotic, a lot of players will, and you try to numb emotions. That's almost like a kettle that's boiling and putting your finger or blocking the top, and the kettle's boiling. At some point, that's going to blow up, right? Emotions, when they suppress, they're bubbling below the surface, and at some point, they will explode. Also, when you go down the route of numbing emotion or trying to experience less of it, exactly what Viktor says, all of a sudden you struggle to find happiness in small moments. So all of a sudden you need something big, like winning a big tournament or having your best ever day to feel happy. When the little things like watching your child smile or go and have a nice meal with your partner, which used to bring you joy, stops bringing you joy. So now you're in this awful situation where you're like, I want to keep these emotions down, but when I do, I'm not experiencing life as I want to. So then it comes to the kind of solution to the problem is to allow yourself to experience a wide range of emotions. Now, like Renes touched on, for us men, that's very difficult. We like to suppress. We like to go to the mind. We like to stay away from the heart and anything feeling based and go to the mind and use logic. So I think the kind of biggest gift poker gives a lot of players is to teach you that you have to learn to deal with emotion. All right. Now, we've got a whole cocktail, whole spectrum of what emotions you will go through. But the main thing is to allow yourself to experience them, but at the same time, staying in control. All right. So I think the first kind of solution to the emotion problem is to map out which emotions you experience, or which cocktail of emotions you experience. Some people experience very high-end ones like tilt and anger, and they're very easy to spot. Others just feel a little bit of agitation or a little bit insecurity or lacking confidence. So you've got to get a kind of profile of what your emotions are. Then you've got to go internal, all right? You've got to get introspection. So I like that Viktor talked about meditation as a kind of tool he used to kind of go into the mind. And meditation is very good for emotions because it creates a bit of space between our thoughts and our experience. So when you meditate for a period of time, all of a sudden you get a bit of space where you can sort of see emotions. All right. Now, emotions have signatures. They feel a certain way in the body, and the mind generally tells you stories about how you're feeling. All right. So as you go through your life, and poker in particular, you have to get good at experiencing a range of emotions while at the same time staying in control. All right, so the first thing is to build that level of awareness, and the second thing is to allow yourself to experience them. Now, this is the hard part. It's almost like a car's going very fast down a motorway, and you're holding onto the steering wheel. The goal is to be able to experience a wide range of emotions and stay in control. Now, at first, that's very challenging. A lot of players will reach out to me and go, Adam, I've got this tilt episode. I feel really angry when this happens. Anger is a very hard emotion to deal with because that's like a full speed emotion. And very often your logical processing has been shut down. So you're acting very emotionally and reactively. So you've got to build a profile of what emotions you're dealing with. You've got to realize the stories you're telling yourself that are leading to that emotion. And then in a kind of hard to explain way, you've got to get good at like letting the heart express emotion. All right. Not suppressing, not numbing, allowing things to come to the surface and allowing yourself to experience emotions. Now, this becomes a challenge because we could argue that being a robot with zero emotion, in theory, could play out better because you would not get any tilt episodes. You could just play the same game over and over. But in terms of being a human and experiencing life, you don't want to go down that route. You want to be allow yourself to experience more emotions. So I say for any players looking to work on this, start to get very comfortable with the emotions you're experiencing, start to realize what things are leading to those emotions, and it will lead you down a path which will very often lead you to the mind, which is telling you a story about the situation. All right, so the emotion is generally the reaction because the mind doesn't like what's happening. All right, so we're in a situation, I don't like that I've lost. I don't feel comfortable that I'm not winning. So all of a sudden your mind's telling yourself a story about the event, which is leading to this emotion. So you've got to go into the operating system, understand the stories you're telling yourself, and allow yourself to feel the emotion while at the same time changing that story narrative. All right, so if every time I lose at poker, I call myself an idiot and I suck and I'm not worthy, oh, that's a very strong story. So every time I lose a poker, that emotion's going to come to the surface. So for me to work on that, first of all, I've got to realize, what is the insecurity coming up? What's the emotion and the intensity of it? How does that feel in my body? And then I've got to start working on, what is this story I'm telling myself? Is it true? Is it accurate? And I need to start breaking down that story. If I lose the poker, does that really mean I'm an idiot? No, it doesn't. So you've got to start unraveling the story. So, and there's two avenues. One is understand how it feels in the body and come to feel the emotion. I think most poker players shut that process off and they go straight to the mind. Now, the mind trying to fix emotions without any feel is very challenging because it's almost like they speak different languages and you can't logic your way through emotions. So I say players who need to learn how to feel emotions, then also learn to get comfortable with the stories that you're telling yourself to kind of work through them. So yeah, I'm interested, Viktor, for yourself. So you said emotions were the bad side of the game, but I think for the audience and myself and Renes listening to you, it sounds like you've got a pretty good control right now over your emotional state. You sound very stoic. You sound like you don't have much of your identity attached to your results. So what are some of the things you've had to learn in terms of managing your own emotions in the poker context?
Yeah, I think like, as I told, my biggest driver is probably anger. And it's like, it can be told as a path. Like first, I was don't even understanding what is my driver and what my main emotion. When I recognize what it's anger, I just tried to separate it. And I was like, okay, I can trash talk to some people. I was like, I was a lot of times I just trash talk to someone when I apologize. I trying to explain people what I'm doing. It's not on bad purpose, but it was helping me to play easier. Like, so when I didn't understand about anger, I was just sometimes when I angry enough, I just played bad. Next step is what I was when I was angry. I still played okay, but I just trashed out. And my final point now, it's when I feel anger, I just go study my opponent to crush him next day. So like for now, I understand my anger. I understand my, like, what we can say, like bad emotion or something like that. I understand why I have it, how to understand it, how to find it, and I just when I feel it while I'm playing, I just delay this to when I go to my work. So when I just opening database of my enemy, I mostly use opponent or enemy for my friends like in real life. So I just using it like this, and I think it's think what helping me a lot.
Perfect. The actual pivot application of exactly what I was talking about, where first of all, build awareness of the emotion itself and how it's impacting you. So first of all, you found out that being angry was causing you to play bad, play aggressively. Then you realize that isn't a very adaptive response and you need to change that. So then you worked on just trash talking people. And the next step was you have that phase, but then the ultimate phase was to use that same emotional state. So to not try to hide it, to not try and suppress it. When you feel that emotional state of anger, you now work on crushing your opponents. And that makes send you into the lab and working on it. So you're now fully embodying the emotional experience that you're having, but you're using it in a very adaptive way. And I think that's the ultimate key, because now if you look at, a lot of people try to suppress emotions. So what happens is they feel uncomfortable when their body's experiencing certain emotions. So they try to limit the kind of range of emotions they experience. Where what you've done, you've widened your range of emotions that you can function experiencing. And at times you've got to play around with that. So it's almost like you start with, when I feel heightened emotions, I can play well, but there's certain emotional states that cause me to deviate strategy or make mistakes. And over time, you want to bring in more emotional states that allow you to play at your best. So yeah, I think with emotions, it's very important to really strip them down to their core essence of what's happening, but also to approach them one by one. Every emotion is different and it has a different kind of end result. So for you, you could see the kind of chain of events that was happening from this, and you work backwards, and over time you built more adaptive strategies that over time, now when you feel that emotion, you work it to crush people. That's amazing. So like every time, don't get you angry. It's like Michael Jordan in The Last Dance. He's like, I really like that Netflix documentary. One of the things that I learned from that documentary is do not get Michael Jordan angry, because he will crush you. He will use that fuel of anger and he will play the best game of his life. So if you're an opponent playing something like that, you're like, all right, let's just walk on eggshells with Michael Jordan. Do not get him angry. He's provoking you, trying to get you to spark him. He's going to use that. Where other players would get angry, they'd foul out the game, they'd play really bad, and they wouldn't be able to utilize it. So yeah, I really like that you found a way to use a kind of heightened emotion, which most people count as bad, and you use that in a positive way. So I think that wraps up the emotional summary, which is great. Rene, have you got any last questions to wrap us up?
Yeah, it was funny that you mentioned that, because he said, now when I'm angry at someone, I'm going to study him. I'm like, okay, if you play against Viktor, probably don't make him angry. Just say, every time when he joins the table, now everyone's like, hey, Viktor, how's your day going? Lovely to see you. Everyone's going to treat him like a god. Like, don't get Viktor angry. I don't want him to start studying me. I didn't do anything wrong. The last point I wanted to touch on before we're gonna close off is, you mentioned that you kind of, I'm curious where you see poker going from here. You said actually that you don't expect a lot of strategical involvement, if I understood that correctly, in the game, right? You think that we have reached the point where it's not you can just take a break for half a year and come back. You also mentioned that you started playing some Triton events, the high rollers, and that really triggered again your passion and your interest for poker. I was curious, like, what are you currently most intrigued by in poker? Is that indeed like the live poker events, where I think we already talked about this off pod as well, where you get to meet like a lot of nice people, where you play against the best of the best? Is this something that you're looking to do more in the future?
I don't like all of this, I can say. Like for now, I will focus on online, because it's a bit funny. I don't think it's only because of that, but I meet Linus a couple of times, and I was like a little bit trolling him, like, dude, why you don't play? Are you good? Are you still good enough? And something like that. Yeah, because like he wasn't grind a lot, and I understand what he just find passion in our way. It's not like because of me, but now he is grinding a lot, and I'm not playing, and I feel a bit ashamed because I was trolling him to play, and now I took like break because of moving somewhere. So I wanna to play more online, and field is pretty interesting now, because like there's a couple of different crews who work with each other and have different strategy. It's Dutch crew, it's Kluka, Brian, and Kevin, and it's like Austrian crew. It's Darrell, Linus, Marcus, and some other guys. It's Russian crew of Aurora and Yunus. It's Stefan, Oshper, me, like separate. We don't work with each other a lot, and it's Spanish guys, Nacho and Davey, and almost everyone is playing differently, and it's very interesting. I think my brain will have a lot of hard food.
But that's what you like, right?
Yeah. I think it will be a very interesting time. And also, I want to go for next Triton if it will be in Asia, because I'm going to Thailand soon. Yeah, so I'm curious for both online and live. And also, it's as I told, like in hard periods, I always want to focus on work, and it's like hard period for whole world now, and a lot of people experience a lot of outside stress, and of course, mostly it's people from Ukraine and Russia, and it leads me to put more focus on my work too, because I just I don't wanna. I forgot how it not doom switching. It's like when you always reading bad news, because almost every news is bad, and a lot of people just dive into this rabbit hole, and I understood pretty fast what it's very bad idea to do this. So I will just focus on my family, friends, and do my work for now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't follow any type of news because, as you said, it's all very negative, and 99% of the time, there's nothing I can do about it anyway. So then it's like,
Yes.
okay, yeah, okay, thank you for this for this news. Now I'm just stressing out because the world is fucked, right? And I compared to in the past, like in the past, people didn't have access to news around the whole world, or they might only have access to news within their country or even within their city. Now, if there's nothing going on within your city, they will look at, okay, is something bad happened in your country? No, in the world. Okay, we will find something, and there's more bad news. And some people like have other views on this. Maybe they think, you shouldn't close yourself off from the world per se. I personally agree with you. I think it's fine to just close your off. You're not acknowledging that, you're not pretending that the world is a fairy tale, but you don't have to get reminded of all the shit that happens in the world all the time. That will not make you any happier.
Yeah.
Any last words that you would like to say to our audience? Anything that you would still like to discuss that we haven't discussed so far before we wrap it off?
No, not much. I think we had pretty great conversation, and like all what I can say to like if some young players will watch this, it's like try to be happier when you play. Like try to focus on feeling good emotions while you're playing. Like feeling negative emotions can be a good weapon in some points. You can turn anger to be more productive or something like that. But if you try to focus on like happy emotions, it will help you to be in the game much longer. If you will be happy from winning pots, happy from good sessions and things like this. So I think it's best what you can do to improve your living if you're a poker player. Because I think not only me, a lot of players who play high stakes, they driving by negative emotions. They like doing through challenges, but you don't need to be high roller to live happy life. And it's like it's main part what a lot of players need to recognize. What if you're stuck on some limits, it's not meaning what you're giving up or something like that. It's just your main goal is to live good life. You, as I told, like when we was talking about solvers, you don't must to call something because like it's GTO, and same with life. You don't must to do something because it's like everyone doing this. You didn't must to try to be high stakes record because some people did this. You need to reflect more on yourself and try to be happy.
Very wise words. Yeah, I think being actually what you said, like acknowledging and accepting any type of current situation that you're in is very important, because if you don't like the situation that you're in, if you don't accept the situation that you're in, you will only increase the stress, you will increase a lot of negative emotions, and that can often just spiral and only getting more of the same. Whereas if you're just very happy with the current, or at least if you're not negative towards the current situation, and if you just try to enjoy the process, often you will experience more emotions and you will sort of attract more positive things happening to you in the future. So it will actually make it way more likely that you will actually end up reaching your goals. Adam, you probably have something to say around this before we close off. This seems like a topic for you.
Yes, it's very much in my field of expertise, or at least interest. And yeah, I think your emotions have EV to some degree. So when you're in a heightened emotional state, feeling good, you're generally going to play your best poker and have a higher EV, as well as a higher enjoyment of the game. In the same time, when you're playing in compromised emotional states, whether that's anger, rage, frustration, you have a lower EV for that session. And like Viktor was talking about, overall, like what is the goal? Like, what are we doing this for? And sometimes we get so fixated on the short term of making money, playing certain stakes, that we lose sight of the bigger game, to be happy, to live a meaningful life, and to enjoy the experience of being a human. So yeah, I think sometimes we get so zoomed in on a pursuit, where reality, taking a step back, reflecting and going, why am I doing this? And if ever you find yourself doing something because you feel like you should do it and you're forced against the corner, you need to take a step back and reflect and going, why am I feeling this way? Why am I putting a gun to my own head and make myself go? I can remove the gun, I can reflect, and I can decide I want to do this and move ahead. And if you don't, sometimes that means taking a step back. And I think Viktor's story throughout this has been a really good example of not just going one direction and just taking a step back, reflecting when you're feeling burnt out or tired from poker. Just take a break, take a step back and reflect and realize what you're doing with it. So yeah, I think it's a really, really good lesson to put yourself into a good emotional state whilst playing. You can use negative emotions to drive you, but they should be short-term fixes and short-term action steps to drive behavior change. But in the main part, you should learn to enjoy the pursuit of showing up playing poker. And over time, you'll find you play your best in those states, and you'll have a much longer career because you're using a kind of long-term fuel source of heightened emotions to drive you. So yeah, really, really good kind of lessons there, and perfect end to the conversation from my point.
Wrapping up another great podcast episode. Thank you a lot, Viktor, for sharing all your wisdom. Adam, main takeaways from our conversations with Viktor for you?
Well, what a great guest. I think he shared a lot of wisdom, and his story was very compelling, motivating, and he shared a lot of character traits that I feel like are very useful for any player to develop. And the 5 character traits I picked out through this episode were his skill of perspective. All right, so he's developed the skill to look at situations both from a long-term perspective, but also how that situation's helping him. He's very objective about planning ahead and seeing how things that are unfolding aren't so detrimental. And this allowed him to move down stakes quite easily without ego. It allowed him to shot take higher stakes when opportunities arose. And he never really lost sight of what he was trying to achieve. And once over time, he learned how to develop that perspective skill to become a better poker player. Next character trait I picked up from him was resilience. I mean, anyone who listens to this episode and doesn't think this guy's resilient needs to re-listen. But yeah, just basically any challenge that came up, he found a way for that to make him stronger, to learn from it. And he always rephrased challenges as something that was fun or enjoyable, and never really got beaten down by anything that poker threw his way. So any challenge that came up, almost battled hard on him, and he came back even stronger. Third character trait I picked up was work ethic. This guy works hard. Like, so we talked about 500 hours of redesigning his game. We talked about 70-hour work weeks every single week for a full year, 1 million hands in 2020 playing 1K plus. That's extreme work ethic. Really, really high level work ethic that he's learned to develop. At the same side, he pushed it too far at times, and he burnt out. He had to learn to how to use that work ethic in a good way without burning out and pushing himself too hard. Then the next one, self-awareness. He always seemed to come back to trying to understand himself better. I found it very interesting when he talked about poker being a strategy game at first. And then over time, he realized he had a lot of mental leaks that he was ignoring. He had the self-awareness enough to seek coaches, seek advice in order to find out basically what was holding him back. He also found out a very big strength of his, which is to play high volume in tough lineups. Now, for most players, that's suicide. Playing high volume in tough lineups, for most players, you're going to go broke. But for him, that's what brings him alive. That's what he enjoys. That's why he still plays poker today, because he wants to be in those tough lineups to challenge himself, to learn and get better. And the final character trait I picked up was discipline. And he phrased discipline as doing the same things consistently over and over, even when it gets boring. So what came to mind for me at the start of the conversation was when he was talking about most people get good at something and then they stop learning, they cap out, he said, because the amount of effort to put in to get a slightly bit better becomes exponentially harder. So this is called the law of diminished returns. So if I'm going to learn a new skill, whether it's poker or something else, you get a big increase, like a spike up, like 0 to 80% is very quick, maybe 6 months to a year. But then that final 20% can take a lifetime. So the pace of improving, the pace of learning is a lot harder. So you don't get the immediate gratification. You don't get to see yourself getting better in big chunks like you do at the start. So now you've got to learn to be consistent and almost do the same things over and over for a smaller and smaller return in terms of getting better. So yeah, I think those character traits really shone through. Really enjoyed the conversation. I think he's a really high level thinker in many situations, and yeah, he's hopefully shared some wisdom that you guys as the audience can relate to and take on board going forward. How about for yourself, Rene? What were some of the main things that you took away from this conversation?
Yeah, like all other guests, these characteristic traits, this is not a coincidence. We see a returning pattern, right? He also mentioned, again, surrounding himself with the right people. He said that he was lucky to have the right coaches that gave him the right mentality. You know, he started with his coaching football, then the people that he surrounded himself with in like the internet cafes. Then he ran into Stefan, he ran into, I think it was Invoker, if I'm not mistaken. So always looking for people. When he started to get troubles with his mental game, he hired the psychotherapist to better understand what's going on. And in all situations, he acknowledged that the situation was shit. He accepted it, and from there he didn't spend much time on like, oh look at me, I'm in a bad situation. He never had a victim mentality, right? He also said, yeah, you know, this is just how I grew up, where I'm from. Life is hard, deal with it, right? And yeah, kind of the what doesn't kill you make you stronger mentality was definitely installed him. I also wrote down, don't make him angry, because then he will start studying you and try to beat you. Don't get in on his anger side, okay? Everyone from now on, be very nice to Mr. Viktor if you play against him. Again, a trend that comes back from a technical perspective. Let go of what you have to do, right? Have a more curious approach towards studying solvers. Why does it do certain things? Try to understand the mechanics. He mentioned that it's very important to, for example, use the program called Flopzilla, in which you can just build ranges and see range distributions, how equities favor on a certain board. And in that process, because, you know, a solver basically already did everything for you, but in that process, he says you learn things, and that actually makes you stick. And if you learn to understand like certain range constructions or certain equity versus equity, what kind of consequences that would have to a strategy, you would start to see patterns which become like sort of the mechanics behind strategies, and you can then translate that to other spots that you haven't studied. Okay, this is actually what we explain in our coaching program as well. That's why we call it the mechanics of poker, right? It's built around certain mechanics, and they come back in every spot. Learn the mechanics, and you can basically play every spot. Okay, and he also indeed talked about how certain things in a solver, or motivations behind the solver, right? He said, yeah, we bluff because our value needs to get paid. If you have a range that doesn't include bluffs in the solver, or not enough bluffs, you don't get paid off, so your value suffers. And it's the same with, no, you don't have to call here. Understand that you usually only call to make sure your opponent cannot start over bluffing you. So you basically call for realization. And there's many things around solvers that people copy, but that don't actually apply in the real world. Actually, in our update, I made a whole chapter. I think it took 2 hours. It's called Solver World versus Reality, where I explained all the reasons behind the strategies of solvers, not necessarily from a mechanics point of view, but more like why certain things are very important, like indeed bluffing, like indeed bluff catching, like balancing, like, you know, all these type of things. And then we're going to reflect on how this actually applies in the real world. So if you're interested in that, reminder, applications for our Mechanics of Poker 2.0 are now open. Okay, we're taking on around 10 students. So if you think you have what it takes to master the mechanics of poker, go over to mechanicsofpoker.com and apply. And then we'll review your application and see if you're the right fit for our program. Okay. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank my co-host Adam for providing all his knowledge again. He went on some good rambles about emotions today. I think it was very good stuff. Very definitely worth listening back to that, as I think it's a struggle point for most players. Most men, as we discussed. I want to thank the audience again for tuning in. Make sure to leave a comment if you liked the episode. Leave your main takeaways, how this podcast is going to help you in your career. If you're listening this on Spotify, Apple, leave a 5-star review, leave a follow, etc., etc., etc. It's really good for growing the pot. And that's going to be it for us, and see you in the next episode.